A butterfly drifts over the city, where everything can change with a single, simple choice. Judd Campbell stares ahead, already regretting some of the choices he's made so far. Inside his room, he's suddenly on edge as someone pounds on his door and calls him honey. He looks back in a cold sweat. The person outside knows exactly where he's hiding. They even checked with the housemaster to confirm his schedule was wide open for the day. He grits his teeth, realizing there's no other stalker in the world quite like her. A blade suddenly pierces through the wood. If he won't open up, she'll just cut her way inside. He cowers as the wood splinters, realizing she's actually serious. The door is blown off its hinges as she announces herself as the student council president. Debris flies everywhere as Judd ducks for cover on the floor. He looks up through the dust as a tall, imposing figure steps into the room. Elnor Illinois La Tristan stops right in front of him, looming over his cowering form. The silver-haired final boss stands tall in her military uniform, looking down with cold, red eyes. He can only stare back at her, completely paralyzed by her presence. Another girl, Yuri a Greyhounder, perches by the window and asks if this is just how his family does things. Elnor ignores the comment, pointing out that this place is way too bright for an assassin to hide. Judd tries to scramble away, shouting that he's incredibly uncomfortable. Suddenly, a third girl crashes down from the ceiling right in the middle of the room. They all close in on him, their gazes heavy as they call out a name. A blue-haired girl flashes a sharp, confident smile, telling him the wedding preparations are already set. His eyes go wide in pure shock. This has officially become a nightmare. The situation spirals as even more people join the fray, looking to take him away. A red-haired demon girl floats in on a staff, telling the others to shut up and quit being so jealous. She smirks down at him, clearly enjoying the absolute chaos she just sparked. He's trapped in the center of a storm, surrounded by powerful women who look ready to kill for him. The tension in the room is thick enough to choke on as they all glare at each other. It turns into a complete free-for-all, with swords and magic flying everywhere while he just tries to stay alive. Elia Crixanax draws her blade, her expression hardening as she joins the fight. The red-haired demon prepares another fireball, not holding anything back. A dark-haired girl looks on, stunned by how quickly the room has turned into a battlefield. The blue-haired girl recovers quickly, showing off that same predatory grin from before. Elnor remains composed, standing her ground amidst the absolute madness. This is the world of the Savior Rising, the game he spent his life clearing. Just a day ago, everything was normal, before he was swept away into this new reality. He wasn't even particularly attached to the protagonist or the world itself. In this life, he's a noble from the Campbell Viscountcy, where farming is the only industry. A firm handshake marks the beginning of his journey to the Imperial Academy. His father breaks down in tears as he says goodbye, calling him the pride of their territory. The old man's only advice is for him to lay low and avoid attracting any attention at all costs. That should be an easy task, given that his status window shows he has the worst stats imaginable. Judd stares at the screen in disbelief. Every single one of his attributes is a dead flat F, but according to the system, if he ignores a quest, it's an immediate game over. Elfante Academy is a place of destiny, but it's destined to fall into chaos once the villains start their games. Judd knows the stakes. Survival is the only thing on his mind, so he vows not to do anything that will put his life at risk. He reassures his father, promising that he won't do anything to stand out or raise the family's reputation. The steam train cuts through the countryside, heading straight for the academy. Judd is already in a cold sweat. He's been dropped right into a high-stakes scenario way too early. Across from him, a beautiful girl sits calmly, sipping her tea. It's Elnor Illinois La Tristan, looking every bit the noble she was born to be, but he knows the truth. Inside her sleeps a grey demon that will eventually devour her soul. She's destined to become the final boss, a monster so powerful that only the true protagonist can stand against her. She looks up from her book, noticing his pale face and asking if he needs a doctor. He quickly declines, trying to look as normal as possible while his heart races. She apologizes for worrying him, explaining that she chose this carriage just to seem more approachable as a high-ranking noble. Judd watches her, realizing she's actually much more considerate than the cold character he remembers from the game. Her red eyes are piercing, making it hard for him to look away. She notices him staring and asks if he's heard some bad rumors about her. He panics slightly, mentioning that people say she's incredibly strict. He laughs it off, but she just stares at him and calls him a strange person. Outside, the peace is shattered as massive boulders start rolling straight toward the train. Everything happens in a blur as he realizes they're about to be crushed. Elnor reacts instantly, her hand reaching out as the impact hits. The explosion is massive, tearing through the train and sending debris flying in every direction. In the chaos, Elnor holds her ground, protecting him from the worst of the impact. Judd clenches his teeth, knowing his F-rank stats won't save him if he doesn't do something. As the dust settles, she looks at him and asks for his name. He hesitates. Telling her might make them cross paths again, which is the last thing he wants for his quiet life. But he can't exactly stay silent, so he gives it to her straight, Judd Campbell. She nods, promising she won't forget him and that she'll repay the debt later. A system window pops up. He's just received 2 powerful survival skills for his trouble. Behind them, the train is a wreck, surrounded by fire and smoke from the collision. The survivors are moved into smaller carriages to finish the journey to the academy. They finally arrive at the massive, castle-like gates of Elfante Academy. He's lost in thought, wondering how his simple plan for a quiet life failed so quickly. He decides it's time to check out exactly what kind of gifts he's been given. The first is Desperate Survival, a rankless skill that boosts his stats the more danger he's in. The second is called Deadly Charm, and it's a lot more complicated than it sounds. It makes it easier for him to gain the interest of those with evil traits, especially in extreme situations. Dud swallows hard. That sounds like a magnet for every dangerous person in this world, like the warrior who goes absolutely berserk the moment a fight starts, or the deranged sword god who will cut down anyone who gets within 3 steps of her. There's the violent assassin who will kill anyone if they're paid enough, and the genius mage whose senses are dull to everything but magic. Dud is panicking. He tries to calm himself down. After all, gaining skills is important if he's going to survive. After the chaos of the journey, Dud finally stands on the academy grounds, watched from above by a mysterious figure. He lets out a deep breath, trying to steady his nerves as he prepares to enter a school full of legendary figures. Inside the grand hall, the entrance ceremony begins with a speech acknowledging the incredible potential of this year's freshmen. Dud tries his best to stay invisible in the crowd of flashy nobles, but his average appearance makes him stand out in his own way. A mysterious man questions the nature of the carriage accident, suggesting that the attack might not have been a random event. Dud's mind drifts back to the moment Elnor protected him, her presence still lingering in his memories. A system alert pops up, ticking down the time until his next fateful encounter with the one known as the Grey Demon. His name is suddenly shouted across the hall, making him jump as a group of students singles him out for attention. They mock his commoner-like appearance, laughing at him for being a country bumpkin who clearly doesn't belong there. The ceremony ends as the first practical evaluation is announced, and Dud finds his name already at the top of the list. He looks up in dread, his heart sinking when he realizes exactly who he's been paired up against for his first match. Walking toward him is Elia Crixinax, a girl with vibrant orange hair and pigtails and a bright smile, looking every bit like a protagonist. She is known as a world-class genius and is destined to become the future savior of the world in the game's original story. Dud breaks out into a cold sweat, realizing that his first day at the academy involves a duel with the actual hero. This is Elia Crixinax, the supposed savior of this world. She's bright, talented, and has the kind of smile that makes everyone believe everything will be okay. Then there's Dud Campbell. He's just an extra with bottom-tier stats, currently sweating bullets because he's stuck in a game world he knows is headed for a demonic apocalypse. The difference between the hero and an extra like him is like night and day, but he's determined to at least stay alive. Dud's definitely feeling the weight of his new reality right now. Elia, on the other hand, is out here doing parkour over walls with a cat like she's just having a normal afternoon. Over at Elfante Academy, the high-ranking nobles are starting to arrive for the entrance ceremony. Atalanta Swansong, the Academy's chancellor, is keeping a close watch on the new batch of students. The entrance duels are already in full swing, but everyone is wondering where one particular student has disappeared to. That would be Elnor Ilinori's La Tristan. She casually walks into the hall covered in fresh blood like it's just another Tuesday. Atalanta is understandably stunned. This isn't exactly the standard dress code for a student. Elnor doesn't look bothered at all, even with blood still spattered across her face. Atalanta just sighs. Managing the literal final boss of the game is going to be an absolute nightmare. Night falls over the academy, but the tension from earlier hasn't faded. Atalanta sits Elnor down to figure out if anyone actually died during whatever she was doing. The silver-haired girl remains cold and silent, which only makes the chancellor more frustrated. Atalanta tries a different approach to get a real answer out of her. She's shocked when a specific name is brought up, someone who supposedly helped Elnor. Elnor just stares blankly, though she's clearly preoccupied with her own thoughts about that person. Meanwhile, Dud is sweating bullets because it's finally his turn to duel. He can't shake the memory of that bloody smile from his head. He stands on the stage with a wooden sword, trembling in front of the entire academy. He knows his stats are absolute garbage compared to his peers. His only hope is a unique skill that increases his stats based on how much danger he's in. Dud looks out at the crowd, knowing that some of these kids will grow up to be the most dangerous villains in existence. His opponent is Elia, and she looks completely disappointed by how much he's shaking. Up close, the intensity of a hero character is enough to make anyone's heart skip a beat. She stares him down, trying to see if there's actually any potential in him. Elia starts closing the distance, and the atmosphere on the dueling floor shifts instantly. She looks down at him with pure disgust, complaining that he's making her look bad by being such a weak opponent. Her eyes are glowing with a terrifying focus as she prepares her move. Dud is basically panicking at this point, realizing how outmatched he really is. The lighting casts a menacing shadow over Elia as she readies her sword. He grips his wooden hilt so hard his knuckles turn white. Suddenly, a system alert pops up, his deadly charm just activated, making the villain's attraction towards him skyrocket. Elia lunges forward with a speed that's just a blur to the spectators. Dud's wooden sword shatters into splinters the moment her strike connects. He's backed into a corner, teeth clenched as he waits for the final blow. Elia doesn't let up, swinging her sword with everything she's got to finish the duel. A heavy kick catches him right in the chest and sends him tumbling backward across the stage. The system detects the danger, but it's not life-threatening enough to trigger the skill's full potential. That changes in an instant as desperate survival hits the X rank and his fist begins to glow with power. Dud counters with a massive punch that lands right on Elia's face, catching the main character completely off guard. Elia takes a direct hit to the face, lightning crackling everywhere as the sheer force of the punch connects with her jaw. Dud puts everything he's got into the follow-through, sending a massive surge of energy straight into the Academy's golden girl. The rest of the students can only watch in complete shock as their top-tier hero gets absolutely rocked by an F-rank nobody. Elia is sent flying back, her head snapping back as she coughs up spit from the staggering impact. A massive shockwave of blue light erupts across the stage, marking the end of what was supposed to be a one-sided duel. Dud stands there with wide eyes and a dropped jaw, looking more like he's seen a ghost than someone who just won a fight. The crowd's reactions are all over the place, ranging from pure horror to total disbelief at the scene unfolding before them. Even Elnor is watching from the sidelines, her gaze fixed on Dud with a look of genuine intrigue. Elia is completely out cold, slumped against the cracked stone wall with her eyes rolled back into her head. News of the massive upset spreads through Elfonte Academy like wildfire. In a private chamber, Dean Conrad is already debating the result, convinced that Dud is either a fluke or a very talented fraud. Atalanta and the other high-ranking officials listen in as they try to process how an F-rank extra pulled off such a feat. Conrad isn't convinced it was luck, noting that absolutely nobody in the academy would be okay after taking a hit like that. He pauses to consider a much more dangerous possibility than just a simple fluke. The group sits around a glowing orb, with the faculty finally admitting that Dud might actually be a monstrous genius. Atalanta adjusts her monocle, looking more curious about the boy than she'd like to admit. They agree that ignoring a student with this kind of hidden potential would be a massive loss for the academy's future. She keeps her gaze steady, probably wondering what other secrets this extra might be hiding. Back in his room, Dud is looking serious, probably realizing his plan to stay invisible just went up in smoke. The school news is already calling him the new star of the academy after his shocking victory. He reads the report with a bored expression, noting that people love a good underdog story no matter what world he's in. His system profile for Elnor pops up, showing that his gift is already working its magic on the game's final boss. Dud kicks back in his chair while a bunch of notifications for points from curious nobles flood his screen. He knows the drill, the curiosity of these powerful figures quickly turns into interest, and then into trust. He looks at Elnor's profile and wonders why the most dangerous woman in the world is suddenly so fixated on him. He taps on a new reward and officially unlocks the Tristan family's legendary sword technique. Then he checks on Elia's status, seeing that her curiosity is maxed out even though he can't claim any rewards from her yet. A sudden knock at the door breaks his concentration. It's Elia, sounding surprisingly polite as she asks if she can come in for a chat. Dud's face immediately drops into a look of pure dread as he considers staying quiet and pretending he's not home. She doesn't wait for an answer and peeks her head in, her face still covered in bandages from their duel. She asks him to open the door, claiming she has something important she needs to tell him. Dud looks down, clearly not ready to deal with the fallout of punching the world's hero in the face. Elia stands there looking uncharacteristically shy, fiddling with her hair as she waits for him to respond. The hallway is completely quiet, making the tension between them feel even more awkward. Her expression shifts to something more intense, like she's finally worked up the courage to say what's on her mind. Dud has a flash of her being dragged away while shouting about wanting to be friends. She gives him a little pout, clearly annoyed that he isn't making this easy for her. She leaves a plain paper bag on the floor between them as a peace offering. She kneels down to adjust it, still looking a bit flustered by the whole situation. Suddenly, the air gets heavy as Elnor appears at the end of the hall, looming over them like a dark cloud. Elia looks up in pure terror, as Elnor's cold presence triggers a frantic warning in the back of her mind. A terrifying vision of a warrior engulfed in flames flashes through Elia's mind, a memory of a past trauma she can't seem to escape. Elia is paralyzed with fear, her body trembling uncontrollably as she kneels on the floor with a look of pure dread on her face. Her golden eyes are wide with panic, reflecting a deep-seated fear that goes far beyond just losing a duel to an F-rank student. In stark contrast, Elnor's crimson eyes remain cold and calculating, showing no emotion whatsoever as she looks down at the scene. Without saying a single word, Elnor reaches out a gloved hand toward Dud, her presence commanding everyone's absolute attention. She takes the bag Elia brought and hands it over, while the hero can only watch in stunned silence as she's completely ignored. Elnor turns her back on them both and begins to walk away, her cloak billowing behind her as she leaves without a second glance. Elia stares after her departing figure, her expression a mix of confusion and lingering fear as she tries to process what just happened. She tries to play off the awkward moment with a nervous laugh, but her shaky smile shows that she's still completely rattled. Elnor stops and coldly declares a new rule. From this moment on, nobody else is permitted to go to Dud's room for any reason. She continues walking without looking back, leaving a bewildered and defeated Elia standing alone in the hallway. Dud watches them go, sweating as he realizes that the game's final boss seems to have developed a very personal interest in him. Elia ponders the strange situation, suspecting that the relationship between Dud and Elnor is far more complicated than it appears. Later, Dud makes his way to the courtyard where the students are gathering for their next round of class assignments. The academy staff begins dividing the students into groups, but everyone is still whispering about the shocking outcome of the earlier duel. Dud checks Elia's status screen and sees her curiosity level has hit 5. Meaning she's right on the edge of a major shift in interest. He recalls finding snacks and a mysterious good luck note in his room, leading him to wonder if he's already being stalked. He sighs and tells himself to focus on the exam, hoping it will be a straightforward part of the game's main scenario. A system notification pops up for Elnor, showing that her trust level is rising and a special character event is about to trigger. Elnor stands at the front of the group, looking like a high-ranking officer in her sharp military uniform and officer's cap. Dud is caught off guard, realizing that the most dangerous woman in the game is the one who will be in charge of his group today. High-ranking officials watch the progress of the class assignment exams through a magical crystal ball in a secure room. Elnor leads the students into the training grounds, her authority absolute as everyone follows her lead into the facility. A red-haired student looks around with a wide-eyed expression of wonder, amazed by the sheer scale of the underground facility. The group enters a deep, stone-walled corridor, with the students marveling at the impressive architecture of the hidden facility. Elia asks if this descent into the dark is part of the test, but Elnor remains silent as they continue going deeper. Suddenly, a heavy mechanical sound echoes through the hall as the entrance is sealed and the power is completely cut. Dud's eyes narrow as he realizes this isn't a standard test, they've walked straight into a carefully planned trap. His system confirms his fears, announcing an Elnor event involving a follow-up assassination attempt by survivors of a previous fight. Two other students find themselves caught in the darkness, looking around nervously as they try to understand what's happening. Dud recognizes them as future members of the main character's party, noting that this is where they were originally supposed to meet. He realizes that these people are crucial to the world's story and decides he can't let them be killed in this trap. He quickly scans the area, placing his hand on a wall map to figure out the best route through the sealed zone. The student with the monocle and the girl in the religious habit look toward Dud, sensing a sudden shift in the atmosphere. Dud stands before the group, his calm demeanor serving as a stark contrast to the growing panic of the other students. In the shadows, his face looks terrifyingly intense as he prepares to deal with the impending threat on his own. Elnor remains composed despite the blackout, though her eyes show she is fully alert to the danger lurking in the dark. Dud slips away into a side passage, breathing a sigh of relief that his plan to distance himself from the main group is working. He briefly remembers the sheer shock on Elia's face when he sent her flying, a reminder of the power he can wield when he's pushed. His goal is to find a quiet spot and lure the threat away from the others so he can handle it on his own terms. He pauses as he hears a noise from the shadows, his senses sharpening as he realizes he's no longer alone in the dark. A man with a scarred face and a menacing grin steps into the light, claiming he's just there to fix the power problem. Dud's system suddenly blares with a crimson warning of a dangerous situation, just as the man's shadow looms over him with a bone-chilling, red-eyed grin. Heavy boots splash into a dark, blue-lit puddle as someone moves through the shadows. Lucian, a girl with long blonde hair and a gentle face, looks on with deep worry. She wonders if Dud will be okay on his own, especially with hooded figures lurking in the background. Elia Crixanax, the orange-haired heroine with bandages on her face, tries to stay positive. She's sure Dud has a plan, but she can tell something big is about to happen to them too. Elnor Elinorize La Tristan, the silver-haired final boss, watches the unfolding events with a cold and piercing gaze. Dud Campbell walks down a dimly lit hallway, seemingly oblivious to the man in a dark suit following close behind. The man flashes a sinister, jagged grin, already convinced that he's tricked Dud with ease. Dud keeps walking forward, his back turned to the potential threat. The stranger's eyes narrow as he prepares his move, his face half-shrouded in shadow. Dud maintains a stoic expression, his profile showing a sharp and calculated focus. Suddenly, the man begins to tear away his disguise, revealing the crazed face of Hazmed, an elite assassin. He draws a blade, ready to strike. Dud turns his head slightly, but instead of panicking, he just looks relieved. It catches Hazmed completely off guard. The assassin is floored by the reaction, staring at Dud in pure shock with his mouth hanging open. Hazmed lunges forward with dual blades, but Dud just stands there calmly, as if he's checking a list. The assassin is baffled as Dud starts muttering about skill ranks. He mentions desperate survival being an A-rank skill, which makes no sense to the killer. Fed up with the nonsense, Hazmed decides to end the fight instantly and charges in for the kill. Dud grips his weapon, a steely look in his eyes as he prepares to counter the attack. Elsewhere, a hooded attacker is sent flying back, his body smashing against a stone wall with brutal force. Another assassin's head snaps back as he's struck by an arrow out of nowhere. The hallway erupts into a battlefield as students fight back with fire magic and projectiles. Elia leaps into the fray, her sword trailing arcs of green energy as she cuts through the attackers. A student with red hair slams an enemy face first into the ground. Blood splatters as more goons fall. An axe connects with a sickening thud, leaving a mess on the cold stone floor. Elia takes a breather, looking around and asking about Elnor's whereabouts. Right on cue, Elnor makes her entrance, unleashing a massive surge of power as she swings her blade. The shockwave is so intense that multiple assassins are launched into the air like ragdolls. One of them is slammed so hard into the ceiling that he coughs up blood. He hits the floor, grit and blood smeared across his face as he struggles to comprehend what just happened. Elnor stands tall, her sword at the ready and her presence absolutely dominating the room. Elia and Elnor face each other. Elia looks down at the guy on the floor and asks if he's the one who was hiding in the building. The assassin lies defeated on the ground, his disguise shattered and his mission failed. Elnor finishes the job by stomping the assassin's head into the stone floor. She gazes down at her work, her expression completely indifferent to the violence. A system notification reveals that Hazmad was a crescent moon assassin, capable of stealing the appearance of anyone he killed. Lucian and another student watch the scene unfold, their faces pale from the intensity of the fight. Alia's eyes harden as she processes the threat they just neutralized. A bloodied dagger lies on the floor. Dud wonders why a barrier like Guardian Soul would be active in a place like this. He concludes that since the academy is full of mysteries, he shouldn't be too surprised. After all, an assassin is basically a weapon themselves. A close-up of the dying assassin shows his eyes glazed over, blood staining his lips. In a flash of motion, Dud lunges forward to deliver a final, decisive strike. His strike connects with Hazm's chest in a powerful impact that sends a shockwave through the air. A system window confirms the success. Dud has performed the Tristan sword technique and increased his proficiency. Dud breathes a sigh of relief, the tension finally leaving his body as the battle comes to an end. Hazmad coughs up blood, his face a mess of bruises. He can't believe he was just hit with the Tristan sword technique. The assassin realizes he was the one being lured into a trap. He looks at the young man standing before him and asks who he really is. A system window pops up. Dud's deadly charm has been activated, leaving the villain in complete awe of his tactical genius. Resigned to his fate, Hazmad tells the boy to just finish him off. Dud keeps it cool, knowing the game's mechanics prevent weapons from being used at safe points, the real reason he brought the killer here. Dud has no intention of killing him. Instead, he wants the assassin to send a message to his associates: stay away from Lady Elnor. A red light glints in a pair of sharp, focused eyes as Elnor watches the exchange from a distance. Dud stands tall, adjusting his uniform. He tells the assassin to come back and try him again when he's better prepared. Hazmad is stunned. He asks if the Tristan girl is really that important to him. Dud doesn't hesitate, he simply confirms it. The system pings again. The deadly charm is working overtime, and the villain's favorability is skyrocketing. Elnor, dressed in her sharp military cap, stares intently at Dud, her gaze softened by something new. The favorability alerts continue to flood the interface, flashing one after another. Dud looks over his shoulder, a nervous sweat drop forming as he realizes the impact he's had. Even more notifications pop up as Elnor approaches. Her presence is as overwhelming as ever. The young student watches her walk toward him, her silver hair catching the light. Back at the academy, the sun sets over the grand architecture. Someone lets out a frustrated sigh at the chaos of the day. Atalanta Swanson, a woman with long brown hair and glasses, is losing her mind over the paperwork. She groans that everything is a complete mess. She's the Academy's chancellor, and right now, she's briefing Elnor on the recent events. Elnor listens quietly as Atalanta mentions the political motives behind the second assassination attempt. The silver-haired girl just looks thoughtful. Nearby, Elia, Crix and Axe and the other students are being praised. Thanks to them, the attackers were subdued without a single casualty. Elnor watches from the balcony as Dud walks away into the distance. She stands with her guards, her mind clearly stuck on the boy who just saved her. Elnor's red eyes look ahead, deep in thought about what transpired in the hallway. Atalanta is still fuming, shouting about what Elnor's problem is this time. The Chancellor is about to lose it, but Elnor just calmly sits in her chair, holding a small item in her hand. Atalanta stops mid-sentence, her eyes widening in surprise at Elnor's reaction. Elnor lets out a small, mysterious smile. She tells the Chancellor that she's already brought the person she was looking for. The two women stay in the office, the tension finally starting to simmer down. Atalanta is still a bit flustered, her face flushing as she tries to keep up with Elnor. They stand together, the Chancellor's shorter frame a stark contrast to the noble lady's presence. Atalanta warns her to be more careful, reminding her that as a lady of House Tristan, she's a constant target. Elnor just gives a knowing look. Elsewhere, a file on Dud Campbell lies open. Someone has decided it's time to keep a very close eye on this mysterious student. Back in his room, Dud is lying in bed, looking absolutely drained. He holds a letter stating they can't even determine his class yet. He flails in frustration, wanting nothing to do with the good news the system keeps promising him. A blue screen flickers in the dark room. Dud has officially completed his first main quest. He checks the details. New information has been updated. The next main quest involves resolving an incident at the freshman reception ceremony. He looks at the symbols for different classes: warriors, mages, and priests, trying to figure out where he fits in this world. Dud looks worried, the weight of his new reality starting to sink in. He taps the screen, scrolling through the updated information. He opens Elnor's profile and sees her trust level has jumped from 2 all the way to 5. There's even a special reward waiting for him in 3 days. It's not just Elnor. Elia Crixanax's interest level is also at 5, and she's close to a change in affection. Dud buries his face in his hands. The final boss, the main protagonist, and a world-ending quest are all hitting him at the same time. A final notification pops up: he's acquired a skill duplication pass as a gift from Elnor. He can't help but scream internally at the absurdity of it all. Dud stands before an old building. A system window identifies it as the old equipment warehouse. Clad in his shadow mask, Dud notes how useful it is to have access to the point store. He's currently buffed by a haste potion and catwalk shoes for stealth. He reflects on how he's managed to break through the security measures to reach this specific treasure farming spot used by elite players. He moves with expert precision, his gloved hand gripping the edge of a ledge as he pulls himself up. He lands softly on the ground, his body low to maintain silence as he navigates the dark interior. A notification reminds him of the vitality recovery biscuit he just used to keep his stamina peaked. He chuckles to himself, acknowledging that while the item's description sounds like a cheesy advertisement, the recovery effect is undeniably real. Inside the warehouse, Dud rummages through massive piles of discarded crates and junk, searching for a specific prize. He's gathered several items already, but he's still missing the most crucial piece of loot. He pops a snack into his mouth while he continues the search. Finally, he uncovers it, the Ultima of Divinity, an ancient incense burner overflowing with a millennium's worth of power. He holds the golden artifact triumphantly. With this, he has everything he came for. Suddenly, a bead of sweat rolls down his neck. The towering stack of equipment behind him begins to shift and groan ominously. Dud's eyes widen in alarm as the entire pile collapses toward him with a thunderous crash. He dives out of the way, the dark room illuminated by a sudden flash as something falls from the wreckage. To his utter disbelief, a young woman with long, dark hair and an ornate military uniform tumbles out, looking pale and unconscious. Dud catches her in his arms, his heart racing. He recognizes her immediately. It's Yuria Greyhounder. A close-up reveals her delicate features, her eyes closed in a deep, unnatural sleep. Panic sets in as Dud realizes the gravity of the situation. This wasn't supposed to happen. Red system windows suddenly flood his vision. Dangerous situation detected, and danger is life-threatening. Another message flashes: desperate survival activated ASEX rank. He sees a faint red glint from the girl's eye. He notices a heavy metal chain clutched in her hand, a weapon that spells certain doom. With a violent burst of energy, Yuria lashes out, her movements a blur of destructive power as she tears through the warehouse. Dud is barely able to track her movements, his face contorted in sheer terror as he faces a threat far beyond his current level. Yuria Greyhounder swings a heavy chain through the air, whipping it around with dangerous speed. Dud Campbell barely manages to block the strike, sparks flying as the chain crashes against his defense. He grinds his teeth, struggling against the sheer weight behind her attack. Yuria stares him down with an intense, unyielding gaze as the dust settles. Dud tries to talk his way out of it, claiming it's all just a big misunderstanding. Even though his survival skill is giving him a temporary boost, his entire body is screaming in pain. He begs her to listen, but she isn't interested in excuses and charges right back in. Dud leaps backward as Yuria lashes out again, the chain whistling past him. Her eye glows with a sharp, predatory focus as she tracks his every move. She brings her foot down with enough force to shatter the ground, sending debris flying everywhere. Yuria doesn't let up, twisting her body to keep the momentum of her chains going. A blade flashes through the air, cutting a bright streak across the battlefield. The tip of the sword stops just inches from Dud's face. He freezes, sweat dripping down his mask. A massive burst of energy erupts between them, pushing the two combatants apart. Dud stands amidst the rubble, asking her to just take one step forward and trust him for a second. Yuria remains skeptical, her sword still raised as she wonders if he's just setting another trap. She eventually lets out a quiet sigh, realizing she's cornered anyway. Dud looks around, noting that they're in a secluded area where even the teachers don't visit. This is the perfect chance. He reaches into his bag and pulls out a pack of stamina recovery biscuits, figuring food is the best way to bridge the gap. He finally takes a breather, relieved he didn't actually die back there, while Yuria starts munching away in the background. He can't tell her his real goal was to steal from her, so he lies and says he was specifically asked to bring her some food. Yuria looks at him with her mouth full, genuinely surprised that anyone would be looking out for her. Dud knows he wouldn't normally meet Yuria this early in the game, but he's already messed up the timeline. He reassures her that her sister is doing just fine in the Holy Empire. With his business finished for now, he turns to leave, promising he'll be back later. He reflects on her backstory. Yuria is in hiding because of her notorious evil sword, which carries a curse that limits her movement. Closing his eyes, he remembers how much she's suffered as the binding vessel for that weapon. Later, Yuria sits peacefully under a tree at sunset, finally getting a moment of rest. The scene shifts to the academy, where a large group of new students has gathered on a hill. Housemaster Atalanta Swansong addresses the freshmen, explaining that they'll need to choose their majors and minors soon. She gives them a bright, encouraging smile, telling them they shouldn't even think about transferring out of her department. Dud stands among the crowd in his new uniform, thinking about the upcoming tutorial events he needs to clear. A massive energy dome protects the city in the distance, a reminder of the dangers outside. His focus is entirely on a place called the Void Zone. A blinding light marks the location where ancient powers once clashed. Skipped, merged into 34. Ancient warriors sacrificed everything here to bind the demons deep underground. Back in the present, a red-haired student waves enthusiastically at the housemaster. Atalanta reassures the class that they'll be perfectly safe as long as they stay inside the protective barrier. Dud puts on a friendly face, but secretly, he's planning to slip away and handle some other business. The students spread out across the field, getting ready to have their lunch near the glowing purple trees. Dud politely asks if he can eat a bit further away from the rest of the group. Atalanta smiles and gives him permission, though she warns him not to wander too far or he'll get into trouble. Atalanta Swansong clicks her tongue as some of the other students start grumbling. They think some country bastard is getting way too much attention lately. In a quiet corner, an incense burner starts to release thick, swirling clouds of purple smoke. Dud Campbell fans the smoke with a cloth, carefully directing the fumes as he carries out his secret plan. Suddenly, a brilliant white light begins to spiral and hum, signaling that something is breaking through from another dimension. The flash is so blinding that Dud has to shield his eyes as the barrier between worlds thins. He stands firmly in the center of the glow, waiting for the visitors he lured here to finally arrive. He looks up, ready to greet whoever or whatever just crossed over. A shovel bites into the hard, sun-baked earth with a heavy thud. Turns out, the divine beings of this world are actually just massive, buff guys with halos and tiny wings who are stuck doing manual labor. One of them looks absolutely exhausted. One of the higher-ranking angels stands tall, her white and black wings spread out as she oversees the divine realm. Down on the ground, one of the worker angels is sweating buckets, looking completely stressed out by his workload. Dud watches from the safety of a magical circle, observing the bizarre sight of angels working a construction site. A recovery truck is parked nearby, and it looks like the divine labor force is finally taking a break. One of the angels, rocking a pair of sunglasses, casually munches on a snack while leaning back. A younger angel looks disappointed, asking his captain if the food shipment is still running late. Dud steps in with a sly grin, reaching into his bag to offer exactly what they're looking for. The angel captain is skeptical, yelling and pointing as he wonders where this human came from. Dud just keeps his cool, leaning over the stone wall to explain that he's just there to help out with some catering. He sets up a massive picnic spread, overflowing with delicious-looking meals that catch everyone's attention. The angels can't believe their luck, hovering around as they take in the mouth-watering scent of the food. Dud hands over a glowing cupcake, telling them to eat up before they work themselves to death. It's a huge hit. The angels are practically glowing with joy as they dig into the unexpected feast. One of the angels is so impressed he starts cheering, while another greedily stuffs his face. Dud watches them eat, his hand on his chin as he calculates the next step of his plan. The exhausted angel from before finally flops onto the ground, looking completely satisfied and full. The incense burner continues to puff out smoke, keeping the connection to the divine realm open. Dud looks on, knowing he's successfully bought their favor with a few simple meals. The angel captain looks back at him, his expression much more friendly now that his stomach is full. He leans in close to Dud, acknowledging that he sees a lot of potential in the young man. Suddenly, a vision of a girl in a black military uniform and a sharp officer's cap flashes by. This is Elnor Elinori's La Tristan, the terrifying final boss of this world, and she warns that a certain gift is far stronger than anyone realizes. Dud snaps back to reality, looking frustrated as he realizes just how much trouble he's in. A long-haired, beautiful angel smiles down at him, seemingly amused by his reaction. Dud sits cross-legged on a mat, focusing as he prepares to receive the rewards for his efforts. Skipped, merged into 33. He also unlocks Protective Shield, a C-rank ability that creates a one-time barrier and boosts his constitution. Dud closes his eyes, feeling the new energy flowing through him. Experience from his previous life is finally paying off. Skipped, merged into 36. Skipped, merged into 37. Skipped, merged into 38. Skipped, merged into 39. Skipped, merged into 40. Skipped, merged into 41. Dud Campbell gives a casual, friendly wave and a simple hi to the newcomer. Elia Crixanax, the world's destined hero, looks at him with a complicated expression. She originally planned to avoid the protagonist of this messy story, but the old angel's advice has made her reconsider everything. Dud smiles, seemingly ready to address whatever it was she had said before. Elia adjusts her orange hair, her golden eyes reflecting a mix of determination and lingering doubt. She thinks back to the times Dud was called a crazy bastard for his reckless and unpredictable behavior at the academy. Despite the strict rules forbidding freshmen from dating, Dud had always been blunt, shutting down any rumors of a relationship with a single, firm word, nothing. Dud stands there looking remarkably cool and composed, a stark contrast to the chaos he usually leaves in his wake. Elia can't help but feel a reluctant sense of admiration for him, even if his latest tactics seem a little desperate. To her, he truly is incredible in the most frustrating way possible. Welcome to the Academy Mock Dungeon, where things are about to get a whole lot more complicated. Elia Crixinax is busy reminding Dud Campbell how she tried to beat him up when they first met. Dud doesn't seem to care and just starts the countdown for the next wave. Right on time, a massive bat monster lunges out of the blue. Elia is caught off guard by the sudden scream of the beast. It's not just one either, a whole swarm of them is descending from the ceiling. Dud stays completely chill, calling out their weak points like he's reading a textbook. Elia follows his lead and slashes through the monsters with ease. She's getting annoyed though, having him bark orders while she does all the heavy lifting is a bit much, but his advice is dead on. He warns her about daggers flying in from both sides before they even appear. She deflects them with a single motion, looking like a total pro. Next, he spots a paralytic poison trap and tells her exactly where to strike to break it. He keeps the pressure on, counting down as arrows zip past him toward her back. Elia holds her ground against the golems, her blade sparking against their armor. She shouts that they'd finish way faster if they actually worked together instead of him just playing coach. The clash of metal on stone echoes through the dungeon as she refuses to back down. With a fierce growl, she charges headfirst into the remaining enemies. One final, crushing blow sends a golem's head flying. The fight wraps up, leaving the arena in a pile of rubble and broken parts. Elia looks at him with a mix of confusion and suspicion. Dud just stares back, looking like he just finished a light jog. Suddenly, confetti falls from the ceiling as an announcement blares that they've broken the previous record. Elia is stunned. She basically soloed the whole floor and somehow still set a new high score. The sheer frustration of playing right into his hands starts to sink in. Up in the observation room, the faculty watches the replay on a magic mirror. Dean Percy is already dreading the paperwork for the budget increase they're going to need. A nervous student confirms that the dungeon difficulty was set correctly. Percy snaps at the Dean of Knights, mocking his obsession with brute force. She notes that while Dud didn't fight much, his coordination was freakishly perfect. It was like he knew exactly what the dungeon would do before it happened. The two students stand in the arena, waiting for the faculty to come down. Dean Conrad reveals he made a hefty bet on whether they could break the record he set as a freshman. Percy is livid that he'd offer such a massive reward without her permission. Dud just gives a small, confident smirk, having secured exactly what he wanted. The deans continue their bickering as they head toward the new record holders. Meanwhile, in a quiet corner of the academy grounds, Atalanta Swanson tells someone they've been overdoing it lately. She casually tosses a thermos across the room. It lands right next to Elnor Elinori's La Tristan, who looks like she just crawled out of a disaster zone. Elnor is covered in sweat, her breath heavy and eyes half closed. Atalanta notes that the girl has a habit of letting her madness take over during training. Elnor doesn't say a word, just downs the drink to soothe the fire in her veins. Chancellor Atalanta is keeping a close eye on the star student, making sure she isn't pushing herself to the breaking point. She clears her throat, trying to break the awkward tension in the room. Dud, on the other hand, is already looking like he's bored out of his mind. He pulls up a status window and sees that Elia's curiosity about him has already reached stage 5. He catches her staring at him with those intense, glowing amber eyes. Elia is clearly trying to figure out if this guy is actually as weak as his stats suggest. Dud just shakes his head, wondering if she's just being friendly or if there's something seriously off about her. Elnor stands ready in her full academy uniform, the absolute picture of a stone-cold final boss. Back in the dungeon, Elia draws her practice blade, curious to see what he's planning next. Dud grips his sword tight, knowing the eyes of the entire faculty are currently glued to him. Elia asks if he actually has a plan, her patience starting to wear a little thin. In the control room, Dean Conrad is already adjusting the difficulty settings for the final section. Dean Percy is losing it. She knows the highest difficulty is basically the same as real, life or death combat. Conrad doesn't care. He's determined to see if these freshmen can actually handle the heat. Elia looks up as the atmosphere in the arena shifts from a mock trial to a literal war zone. Dud just gives a small smirk, completely unfazed by the sudden jump in danger. Percy takes a slow sip of her tea, trying to ignore the fact that the guy next to her is a total maniac. Elia's expression turns to one of pure shock as the first wave of high-level monsters spawns in. Conrad knows that if things get too out of hand, he'll have to jump in and save them. But for now, the two of them are surrounded by nightmarish beasts on all sides. The dean has a twisted, excited look on his face. He's genuinely enjoying the chaos. Percy is horrified, and one of the staff members is already crying, thinking the academy's reputation is finished. The system starts blaring a danger warning as the monsters launch their first coordinated attack. A massive, armored rhino beast leads the charge, shaking the very foundations of the room. Sparks fly from Dud's blade as he stands his ground against the incoming stampede. The system confirms the obvious. The level of danger is officially life-threatening. Dud's eyes turn cold and sharp. It's time to stop holding back and show them what he can do. He meets the giant monster head-on, delivering a single, blindingly fast strike. Conrad is practically cheering, his eyes wide with a maniacal glee at the display. Elia watches in awe, her hunch about Dud's hidden power finally being proven right. Dud effortlessly dodges a massive claw swipe that would have crushed a normal student. He counters with a slash that cuts clean through the monster's thick, leathery hide. He's a blur on the battlefield, moving through the monsters like they're made of paper. Conrad admits he'd be shocked too if he hadn't seen this sudden jump and skill before. Percy is sweating bullets, realizing the student she underestimated is actually a monster. Elia kicks off the back of one beast, her movements starting to sync up perfectly with Dud's. Dud is a whirlwind of steel, carving his way through the pack with surgical precision. Elia grinds her teeth, pushing her body to the limit to keep up with his insane speed. She delivers a point-blank strike to the core of the final giant monster. "Now, Dud," she screams, setting him up for the killing blow. Dud leaps high into the air, calling upon the legendary Tristan sword technique. He brings the blade down with an explosion of light, completely obliterating the beast. The monster's massive tail is severed as the strike connects with devastating force. Dud takes a moment to catch his breath, the physical toll of using such a high-level technique finally hitting him. A violent explosion rocks the entire dungeon, signaling the absolute destruction of the simulation's final boss. Dean Conrad is so moved by the display that he actually drops to one knee, his eyes wide with newfound respect for the boy. He can't help but gloat to Dean Percy, who is clearly fuming over the bet she just lost to her colleague. As a reward for their record-breaking run, they are granted a special privilege, access to the exclusive Vision Warehouse. Elia is ecstatic as she reads the document, realizing they've just gained a massive advantage over every other student. But before they can celebrate, a hand drops onto Dud's shoulder, a silent warning that the real challenges have only just begun. Elnor asks him point-blank if he's got a thing for that freshman. Dud's already sweating bullets, not sure how to handle the sudden interrogation. She warns him she's only going to repeat herself once, and he's left wondering why she even cares. The system literally pings him with a danger warning as he tries to come up with an answer. It's not just a hunch, the game interface is screaming that things are about to go south. Elnor is just standing there with her hand on her sword, waiting for him to say the wrong thing. He tries to play it cool, thinking back on all the training he's been doing with Elia lately. She leans in close, asking if he actually missed her while he was away. Dud's completely frozen, unable to find the words to satisfy the girl who's basically the world's final boss. She looks away for a second, almost looking like she's actually shy. Then she just shoves a white envelope into his hands. He's left standing there in a daze, holding a letter from the most dangerous woman in the academy. Later that day, he's still staring at the thing like it's a ticking time bomb. The sun's starting to set, casting long shadows across his room. He finally sits down to process the fact that the girl he's supposed to avoid just asked him to be her partner. Suddenly, there's a knock at the door, catching him off guard. He opens it up to find Elia standing there, looking way too energetic for this time of day. Before he can even say hi, she slides another envelope across the desk with a little bear sticker on it. Dud's heart skips a beat. He really doesn't need a second person making demands of him. She gives him a playful wink and tells him she'll be waiting for his answer. She doesn't even wait for a response before shouting for him to hurry up and read it. He watches her literally skip down the hallway, celebrating her mission accomplished. He just facepalms, wondering why his life as an extra turned into a magnet for weirdos. He slowly peels open the second letter, dreading what's inside. His eyes go wide as the realization hits him like a freight train. It's a total disaster. The protagonist and the final boss are both coming for him. He literally grabs his head and screams, feeling the weight of the entire plot crashing down on him. Now he's got two letters on his desk and a choice that could get him killed either way. If he picks one, the other becomes a lethal enemy. There's basically no winning here. The scene shifts to the academy's grand ballroom, all decked out with massive chandeliers. Some student is waving and calling out to a professor nearby. Elia stands in the middle of the ballroom, taking a deep breath to calm her nerves. She looks over at Dud, clearly hoping he's made a decision about their partnership. They're standing back to back, caught in a sea of other students. He checks his system shop and spots an item called the Clone Walker for 1,000 credits. Without hesitation, he taps the screen to purchase it. He scrolls through the point shop, looking for any other buffs he might need to survive the night. He knows the stakes. If anyone sees him and his clone at the same time, the whole ruse falls apart. It's a huge gamble, but it's the only play he's got. Outside, a monster bear with mechanical eyes lets out a bone-chilling roar. A massive cage is hauled into the academy, looking like a disaster waiting to happen. Dud knows this experiment is the trigger for the game's first major disaster, and he just needs to survive it. Dud checks his system, seeing the pheromone buff is active and hoping his luck holds out with both girls around. The pink mist from the item is definitely doing its job, but the extra attention is already making him sweat. Elnor finds him first, her voice catching him off guard as she calls out to him. He tries to play it off by complimenting the flowers, but he's clearly a nervous wreck under her gaze. She tells him the scent is actually driving her crazy, leaning in with a heavy blush that spells trouble. He starts panicking, realizing the fated attraction trait might be working a little too well today. A system message pops up, confirming Elnor is officially under the effect of his pheromones. She's got a dazed look in her eyes that really shouldn't be there for the game's final boss. In his head, he's pleading for things to stop as she remarks on how manly he suddenly seems. She takes a moment to breathe, her hand on her chest as she tries to handle the sudden surge of interest. Dud is preoccupied, knowing his clone is currently with Elia and they need to stay as far apart as possible. She lets out a relieved sigh, but it's obvious she's still feeling the effects of the item. She suggests heading to a food stall, and Dud is just happy to have a distraction. She gives him a gentle smile, looking way more like a normal girl than a world-ending threat. He thinks about getting her a gift but quickly shoots it down. He doesn't want to dig this hole any deeper. They take a break for some water, and she brings up his choice of major at the academy. Sitting across from her, he feels the weight of her presence, even while they're just having a casual snack. She encourages him to rethink his path, believing his talent is better suited for something other than theology. but he's dead set on learning holy skills, knowing they're the only way he'll survive the coming apocalypse. He wonders what it is she's so intent on protecting, or if she's just trying to control his development. He's already thinking ahead to the secret society incident, an event he knows is destined to happen. Elnor asks if his choices are actually linked to her and the Tristan family legacy. In the background, other students are whispering about the legendary curse that turns her family into monsters. Her red eyes flash with a hint of darkness as she listens to the gossip swirling around them. The atmosphere at the table turns cold, and Dud can tell she's carrying a massive burden on her shoulders. She looks down, her expression becoming uncharacteristically somber as they talk about her family's fate. She claims she has no other reason for her interest, but the look on her face says otherwise. She admits she knew things would turn out like this from the very start, letting out a weary sigh. As she walks off, she can't help but think about what a strange person he is. Nearby, a dark room is filled with cages of beasts that are clearly being kept for something sinister. Meanwhile, Elia is walking with the clone, feeling awkward because he's barely saying a word to her. She's determined to stick close to him, hoping to learn more about his connection to the Tristans. The clone is just trying to stay in character, feeling the absolute madness of the situation. Alia's eyes narrow as she starts to realize they've wandered into a restricted area of the academy. They walk past several occupied cages, and a loud metallic clang makes them both freeze. A massive, snarling bear with glowing red eyes roars at them from behind the bars. She's shocked to see that the monsters are practically unrestrained, with no safety measures in sight. A device on the cage emits a sharp beep, and she watches in horror as the lock turns red and clicks open. An explosion of fire erupts from the cage, and the clone has to tackle her to the ground to save her life. Back in the ballroom, Elnor hears the distant blast and immediately knows the piece is over. Screams erupt from the crowd as the panic from the monster escape reaches the main hall. Dud shields Elia from the debris, realizing the game's first major disaster has officially begun. Dud is pushed to his limit, the mental toll of the clone walker and the unfolding chaos starting to weigh heavily on him. Elia is frozen for a split second, the reality of the monster breakout finally sinking in as she faces the beasts. A massive werewolf and a stone-skinned golem snarl at her, their red eyes fixed on their next meal. The monster's hunger is palpable, their jagged teeth and sheer size making the situation look increasingly desperate. But the shock in Alia's eyes is quickly replaced by a fierce determination, her golden gaze burning with a warrior's spirit. Gripping her weapon, she stands her ground over the fallen Dud, ready to fight her way out of the nightmare. A system quest pops up: monsters are loose, people are dying, and the penalty for failure is going to be massive. Dud Campbell is already on the move, while Elnor watches him from a distance. Elnor doesn't look like she's planning to help just yet. Dud is sweating bullets, barely holding it together. A notification confirms his clone is back, and he's deep in the academy's hallways. He finds Elia, who's just relieved he's finally awake. Apparently, his heroics worked a bit too well, because Elia's affection just spiked and the whole story is going off the rails. Dud is realizing just how much he's messed up the timeline. Elia wants to move fast to stop whatever's happening on the first floor, but the situation is already getting worse. The rest of the students are panicking, and nobody knows what to do. That's because something massive is lurking in the shadows. A professor tries to hold the line with a magic barrier, but the beast just screams and shatters it like glass. Dud sees the whole thing go south in real time. Without the heavy hitters around, they can't even use the high-level blessings. Elnor is ready to step in, but the faculty is stalling. This guy is basically telling everyone to wait for backup that isn't coming. Elnor isn't the type to just sit around and wait. Before she can move, Dud sprints past, snatching a priest's rosary on his way. He dives straight through the shattered barrier. The priest can't believe what he's seeing. Dud is locked in, focused on the beast. The rosary syncs with his stats, unlocking a couple of high-tier holy skills. The system warns him that he's about to die, which is exactly what triggers his EX rank survival skill as the giant bear lunges. He's the only thing standing between the monster and the students. The priest tries to shout him back, but it's too late. The bear goes for the kill, but Dud's new passive skill starts converting his stats into raw defense. He throws up a holy barrier, complete with massive golden wings. The bear slams into it, but Dud doesn't budge. He's gritting his teeth, feeling the weight of the attack. The impact is massive, shaking the whole hall. From the back, it looks like he's an actual angel protecting the room. The monster keeps swinging, but the shield holds. The priest is losing his mind. There's no way a regular student should be this strong. Elnor is more annoyed with the faculty than anything else. Elia can only watch as her savior takes the hit. The two main heroines are both fixated on the guy in the center. Elia is impressed he could pull off a high-level blessing with zero prep. Dud is still standing firm against the beast, and Elnor's interest in him just went through the roof. Dud is just watching the final boss do her thing. Those red eyes are locked onto the target. Elnor looks like she's about to end this whole situation. Elia is looking pretty beat up, but she's still in the fight. Dud is sweating through his uniform, probably wondering if his heart is going to give out. The bear monster isn't going down without a fight, though. It's a standoff between the F-rank extra and the most dangerous woman in the academy. Elnor finally draws her sword, and the air itself feels heavy. One swing, and the whole place practically explodes. She's like a white blur, jumping straight at that massive beast. The bear's eyes are glowing red, but it's definitely on the defensive. The impact is so big it looks like a tactical nuke went off in the hallway. Dud is losing his mind. Elnor wasn't supposed to be part of this event at all. The monster lets out one last desperate roar. Elnor stands in the middle of the wreckage, looking like she didn't even break a sweat. Dud recognizes the move. That was the legendary Tristan sword technique, the real deal. She starts charging her blade, and the energy is just pouring off of her. Then she lets loose a horizontal slash that cuts through everything. She's got this cold, focused look that says she's finished playing around. The bear takes the hit full force, blood spraying everywhere. She's moving way faster than any human should be able to. One more strike connects, and the beast's armor finally shatters. She spins through the air, delivering a finishing blow that lights up the whole hall. That bear didn't stand a chance. A massive shockwave ripples out from the point of impact. Dud is staring in shock because his game knowledge is officially useless. The plot is completely derailed. The system confirms the quest is done with 0 casualties, which is basically a miracle. He's trying to process how much he's actually changed. Elnor just stands there in front of the flames, looking like the villain she's destined to be. Fire is spreading, and someone's shouting for everyone to clear out. She looks completely unfazed by the inferno around her. She turns back, her eyes cold as ice. Meanwhile, Dud is at his limit, his holy barrier barely holding together. A second monster, a flaming skull beast, suddenly lunges from the smoke. He's trying to hold his ground, but his legs are shaking. He's literally coughing up blood while Elnor just watches. Everything goes black for a bit, and the next thing he sees is an unfamiliar ceiling. He wakes up in the infirmary, gasping for air. But he's not alone. There's a woman with a monocle staring him down. She's just casually reading a book like it's a normal Tuesday. Meet Atalanta Swansong, the immortal who's been around for over a millennium. Dud is instantly on edge, wondering why someone this important is visiting an extra like him. Atalanta gives him that good news or bad news first smile, which is never a good sign. Dud is stuck in bed, forced to play along with the most powerful woman in the room while he's still recovering. He already knows the answer. He braces himself for the bad news that's definitely coming his way. Atalanta gets straight to the point. She wants to know exactly how much he knows about the demon they just fought. The question brings back memories of that massive bear beast, roaring like the world was ending. Dud remembers the desperate struggle, his wings of light barely holding back the darkness in a frantic defensive stand. He remembers the look in Elnor's eyes right before she struck, a gaze that felt cold and utterly inhuman. She was a whirlwind of white hair and steel, delivering a strike that felt more like an execution than a fight. But looking back at that shadowy monster, he realizes that the real nightmare might only be beginning. A warm light flickers on the ceiling of a quiet, hospital-like room. Atalanta Swansong leans in with a knowing smile, her monocle catching the light. She stands over Dud Campbell, who's still recovering in bed after the recent chaos. She asks him what he meant by all that talk about people scheming. Dud just sighs, pointing out that he hasn't even been assigned to a class yet. She can tell he's clearly annoyed by the whole situation, but she explains that the academy is desperate for talent. They'll take anyone, even if they have to drag them from hell. As she turns to walk away, the room feels a lot heavier. Dud watches her go, wondering if this all ties back to the successor to the throne. She stops for a moment, her gaze sharpening behind her lens. In the shadows, she adjusts her monocle with a cold, calculated look. She looks out over a model of the city, mentioning that their nice neighbors might not stay friendly for long. The world is split between Elfante, the tribal association, and the Holy Empire, and the peace is fragile. She gives him a smug smirk that says she knows exactly how to play this game. Dud realizes that catching the attention of the higher-ups is the last thing he wants. Suddenly, a vision of the city being consumed by a massive magical explosion flashes through his mind. People are incinerated in the flames as she asks if he recognizes a certain seal. She holds up a paper with the mark of the purifiers, the cult destined to trigger the apocalypse. Dud's eyes widen as he recognizes the seal from his knowledge of the game. It's the mark of demons, usually found over piles of sacrificial remains. He asks her point blank why she's telling all this to someone like him. He agrees to keep the secret, though he's clearly shaken by the reveal. She walks out with her drink, leaving him alone in the quiet room. Dud looks completely stressed out. His plan for a quiet life is already falling apart. He asks her again why he's involved, and she just calmly sips from her mug. She gives him a simple yes and a smile that confirms his worst fears. He sees himself standing in the middle of the total destruction he knows is coming. She just laughs it off, claiming she isn't lying about their plan's final goal. Outside, the grand towers of Elfante Academy stand tall under the clear sky. Dud stands in the hallway and lets out a long sigh of relief, holding his new paperwork. Suddenly, a voice calls out to him, stopping him in his tracks. It's Conrad Veltador, the Dean of Knights, sporting a scar and a sharp grin. He tells Dud he can't skip classes anymore, while Dud tries to hide his assignment behind his back. Conrad holds up the official document for Dud's temporary class assignment. Dud takes a look at the paper, and his expression immediately shifts to dread. His face goes pale as he reads the names of his new classmates. He's been assigned to the same class as the final boss, Elnor Elinori's La Tristan. And to make it worse, the main heroine, Elia Crixinax, is the class vice president. The two most dangerous women in the school are already at each other's throats. Dud can barely swallow as he realizes his plan to stay invisible is officially dead. Elia leans in close with a smile, saying she knew he'd end up on her side. Meanwhile, Elnor sits nearby, looking unbothered as she brushes off a minor setback. Talion Armand sits focused on his book, his long blonde hair falling over his academy uniform. Dud Campbell keeps his eyes glued to the glowing blue system window floating in front of him. A notification pops up for Elnor Elinori's La Tristan, showing that her trust has just started to turn into affection. The screen displays his current proficiency with the Tristan sword techniques, sitting at 58%. Another skill window details a deep breathing technique meant to push his stamina and durability to their limits. Dud stays focused while Elia Crixanax watches him from the side, clearly curious about his progress. Elnor shakes her head with a dismissive look, seemingly bored by the training exercises. In contrast, Elia grits her teeth, her gaze burning with an intense, competitive fire. A system update confirms that Elia's curiosity has officially evolved into a higher level of interest. The system explains the rule of evil, a unique skill that allows Dud to influence the good people around him. It advises that corrupting good individuals or raising their affection levels will lead to even greater rewards. Dud can only stare at the screen in disbelief, wondering what kind of mess he's gotten himself into. Later, Dud stands before a group of fellow students in an open field as they prepare for training. Conrad Veltador, the scarred Dean of Knights, watches the young man with a stern, appraising eye. Dud remains composed, calmly informing the group that they have exactly 10 minutes. Conrad closes his eyes and gives a faint, satisfied smile at the student's confidence. Elnor, looking sharp in her officer's cap, offers a simple, casual wish of good luck. Elia flashes a bright grin, showing off her teeth as she tells the others they'll start in 5 minutes. Dud takes a breather on a large rock, pulling up his screen to double-check his stats. Elia hops over and laughs, insisting that she's his friend too, whether he likes it or not. Lucian, dressed in her white and gold habit, watches the two of them with a cold, skeptical expression. Dud looks away, muttering that it's nothing important as he tries to keep his distance. Elia doesn't let up, leaning in with her eyes wide and sparkling with pure admiration. She marches right up to him with a determined look, refusing to be ignored. Lucian bites her lip, wondering if her earlier reaction was a bit too harsh. A student approaches Dud from behind, hesitating for just a moment before speaking. Dud looks up in surprise as the blonde boy calls out his full name. It's Talion Armand, clutching a spear and asking about Dud's connection to the warrior candidate. Dud stammers out a nervous reply, caught completely off guard by the question. The rule of evil suddenly triggers, and Talion's face darkens as he's overtaken by an artificial rage. Dud's eyes widen as he sees the system confirm that he's successfully enraged a good individual. Talion snarls, demanding to know if their earlier duel was nothing more than a scripted sham. Dud realizes he can use the boy's anger to his advantage, planning to turn him into a useful tool for later. He locks eyes with Talion, his mind racing as he plots to take down his next goal in one clean swoop. Elia watches the tense confrontation from a distance, her expression uncharacteristically serious. The scene shifts back to the grand stone exterior of one of the academy's many lecture halls. A hand taps a piece of chalk against the blackboard, bringing the room's attention back to the lesson. Elnor sits in the front row, looking utterly bored as she rests her chin on her palm. The professor, sporting a thick mustache and green suit, looks completely flustered by a student's question. He stammers out a nervous confirmation, clearly overwhelmed by the pressure. The lecture hall is packed as the professor explains the importance of archery and throwing techniques for swordsmen. Elia lets out a tired sigh, admitting that while the professor is correct, the extra training sounds exhausting. Dud Campbell clasps his hands together, his face shadowed with stress as he listens to the debate about whether a swordsman can truly overcome a range disadvantage through skill alone. Elia Crixanax sharply points out the gap between theory and reality, leaving Dud trapped in a comic state of shock as Elnor watches him with her piercing red eyes. The tension reaches a breaking point as Elia and Elnor glare at each other with lightning in their eyes, both resting a hand on Dud's head while Elia scolds Elnor for constantly interrupting the professor. Talion Armand looks down at the guy he just flattened, mocking him for how easily he went down. Dud Campbell just stares back, looking more annoyed by the trash talk than the actual defeat. Talion walks off with a smug grin, clearly feeling like the king of the academy today. Dud watches him go with a slight smile, already planning his next move in this crazy survival game. High above, the legendary final boss Elnor Elinori's La Tristan looks out over the grounds with a cold gaze. Next to her, a green-haired official named Conrad diligently takes notes in his ledger. Conrad looks a bit stressed, probably because standing next to the final boss is terrifying. Elnor sighs, her sharp red eyes showing she's got zero patience for anyone's incompetence. She tells him he needs to start seeing things from her perspective for a change. She adjusts her glove with a calm, intimidating focus that commands the room. Conrad watches her closely, clearly wary of the power she wields. Nearby, a teacher threatens to kick someone out if they keep trying to interfere with the exams. Near the training grounds, a blonde priestess named Trisha watches a battle unfold from the shadows. She notices that Elia is fighting with a lot more intensity than usual today. Elia Crixanax, the story's main hero, lets out a battle cry as she takes on a pack of monsters. She lands a brutal hit, sending blood spraying as she tears through her targets. More beasts lunge at her, but Elia is already moving to strike them down in midair. A strange purple energy flares from her chest as she pushes her physical limits to the max. The fight ends in seconds, leaving Elia standing among the remains of the monster pack. She flashes a cheerful grin at Trisha, acting like the whole thing was just a light workout. Trisha isn't buying it, noticing the dark energy still lingering on Elia's uniform. She insists that something is clearly bothering her friend and demands to know what it is. Elia finally gives in and plops down on the grass with an exhausted sigh. She looks away, admitting she can never really keep a secret from her best friend. The wind rustles through the trees as the two of them share a rare moment of peace. Elia gets a determined look in her eyes, likely thinking about her mysterious rival, Dud. Trisha watches her with a knowing, slightly worried expression. Elia starts rambling about his weird training methods and how he's supposedly trying to help her. Trisha just laughs and prays, suggesting the guy probably just thinks of her as a great friend. The conversation ends under a clear sky, but things are about to get chaotic elsewhere. Cut back to Dud, who is currently hauling ass across the training field. A spear whizzes past his head, narrowly missing him as a system message pops up. Talion is in a full-blown rule of evil berserker rage, his eyes glowing red with pure hatred. He's absolutely livid, his face contorted in anger as he closes the distance on his target. Dud barely ducks in time as a spear strike slices through the air where his head just was. Talion is relentless, charging forward with a terrifying speed that's definitely not F rank. Dud lets out a panicked heek as he keeps running, realizing he might have pushed the guy too far. Talion screams at him to stop running and face him like a real man for once. Stop! Dud yells, throwing his hands out like he's trying to halt a runaway train. The sudden shout actually makes Talion stop in his tracks, looking completely bewildered. Dud puts on a nervous but sly grin, suggesting they just split the rewards and call it even. Talion actually takes the bait and runs off into the distance, leaving Dud to finally catch his breath. Talion Armand is sent flying back by a sudden, powerful force. A massive shockwave erupts as weapons clash in a blinding light. Talion is wide-eyed with shock as Dud Campbell stares him down, completely unfazed. Elia Crixanax enters the fray, looking ready to tear through anyone in her way. She grips her sword, energy crackling as she prepares for the next strike. Dud watches her, wondering if they can even call themselves friends after this. He gives her a hesitant look, the tension between them thicker than ever. Trisha catches up to him and starts another one of her famously long lectures. Dud lets out an exhausted sigh, knowing he's in for a long conversation. Trisha worries that things are about to get bothersome for everyone involved. Dud tries to make a quick exit with his bag, but Trisha keeps talking. She's shocked that Dud actually forced Elia into a fight with Talion. Dud stops dead in his tracks, his face twisting in absolute disbelief. He finds Dean Conrad sitting on the ground, looking like he's seen better days. Right next to him, the legendary Elnor is lying flat on her back. Conrad cracks a smug grin, commenting on how much Dud has improved. Dud just smiles nervously, hoping to just get his score and leave. Elnor looks completely out of it, though Conrad jokes about her playing dead. Conrad rubs his head, clearly feeling the weight of the day's chaos. Trisha follows Dud as he walks away, still fussing over the situation. She begs him to look after Elia, but warns him not to be too nice. Dud waves her off with a casual "don't worry," promising to do his best. Trisha watches him go, hoping he knows what he's getting himself into. Suddenly, a strange golden light erupts from near Elia's feet. It turns out to be a powerful healing aura surrounding the fallen Elnor. Elia watches the scene with a cold, intense gaze that's actually kind of terrifying. The scene shifts to the majestic towers of the spellcraft department. Inside, Chancellor Atalanta Swansong is calmly enjoying her tea. Dud turns on the charm, calling her the goddess of spellcraft to get what he wants. The other students in the room look on with pure disgust at his brown nosing. Dud knows he needs every advantage he can get to survive the coming storm. Atalanta lets out a tired sigh, asking him to just tell her what he wants. A system window pops up. He's gained the Seed of Evil as a reward from Elia. The point store has updated, offering him new and powerful special skills. He notices Elia has gained a negative seal, making her vulnerable to his skills. Talion is in the same boat, giving Dud even more leverage over his rivals. Dud knows these skills are game changers, far better than any simple item. He thinks back to the purifiers, knowing their arrival will change everything. He looks at the mark on his hand, realizing just how much more he needs to do. Elia remains silent, her face a mask of grim determination. Talion looks completely broken, his pride shattered by the day's events. Somewhere in the distance, someone is running, and they're in a big hurry. Elia Crixanax points her blade at Talion, her voice cold as she tells him he's mistaken. She stares him down, reminding him that this is the first time they've met since his humiliating defeat. Talion lets out a strained, nervous laugh, the sharp edge of the sword just inches from his throat. Elia's gaze turns predatory as she warns him not to even think about bothering Dud again. Pinned to the dirt, Talion can only grit his teeth in a mix of pain and pure humiliation. A dark shadow falls over Elia's face as she demands silence, refusing to hear any more of his excuses. She stands over him, a clear warning in her stance as she ensures he won't be getting up anytime soon. Elia looks down at the defeated bully, her presence overwhelming and undisputed. Talion's mind reels with the memory of Dud's unexpected strength, his face pale with lingering fear. Finding his pride completely shattered, Talion sinks to his knees and bows his head in a forced apology to Dud. Satisfied with the result, Elia's hand clicks the guard of her sword as she prepares to move on. Dud's trying to explain his plan, but it's clearly an uphill battle. Percy's sister Levantine looks like she hasn't slept in a week. just focusing on her tea. She tries to make a quick exit, but he stops her right there. He pulls out the fine print, reminding the dean she's obligated to help with ordinary requests. She's not buying it, especially when his ordinary request is for a weapon. He insists it's not for hurting people, he just needs it. She towers over him, looking completely unimpressed with his excuses. Suddenly she's talking about him saving the world and having a harem. Then she loses it, blaming him for making her ramble to herself like a crazy person. She gets all flustered and asks if there was something else he wanted to bother her with. He doesn't miss a beat, asking for the warehouse item she promised him and Elia. With the deal done, he heads out, walking down the empty corridor. He checks the list, it's full of rare materials he'll need for an interdimensional key. He's not alone in the hallway for long. A hand on a cane stops him in his tracks. Gideon Galestad La Tristan greets him, acting like their path crossing is just pure luck. Dud isn't falling for it. He's breaking a sweat, thinking this guy is just a high-class crook. He knows the truth, though, this is the man who leads Fury Fire. Gideon admits he's impressed, saying most people wouldn't have the guts to stand their ground. His eyes glow red, the friendly mask slipping for a second. Dud doesn't back down, meeting the villain's gaze head-on. He remembers the original plot, this guy was supposed to be Elias' problem. Gideon goes quiet for a moment, looking away as if he's reconsidering. Dud just scratches his head and gives a non-committal answer as the guy leaves. The second he's alone, he lets out a frustrated sigh. He takes a look at the golden card he's holding, and the glare is blinding. He rubs his eyes, coming to terms with the fact that he's stuck in the main event. His mind flashes back to the brutal battles he's seen in the game. He thinks of Elia and Elnor, the two women currently complicating his life. He closes his eyes, trying to calculate the risks of what he's about to do. Even the faculty, like Atalanta Swansong, are starting to keep an eye on him. He's still trying to figure out why he's the one who has to play hero. It's a lot to take in for someone who just wanted to survive. A bit later, he finds himself knocking on a heavy wooden door. He waits, looking a little nervous about who's on the other side. Elnor Illinois La Tristan opens the door, looking surprisingly casual in her nightgown. She leads him into the room without saying a word. He clears his throat and finally asks her to level with him. She just turns and looks at him with those piercing red eyes. She's surrounded by books, looking a lot less like a final boss and more like a messy student. Yuria Greyhounder isn't having it, scolding her for renting books just to let them sit there. She makes it very clear that she's not covering any more late fees. Elnor points out that Yuria is listening while they talk, trying to keep things private. Dud looks completely lost, not knowing where this conversation is heading. She drops a bombshell, she wants to go to a place famous for dates, and she wants him to come along. Dud can literally hear his heart thumping in his chest at the sudden invitation. Even the legendary final boss Elnor is blushing, her red eyes looking unusually soft. They stand there in the quiet room, the tension between them thick enough to cut. Just then, Elia Crixinax shows up with a bag of cookies, totally oblivious to the vibe. Dud starts sweating, quickly insisting to Elia that they're all just friends. Elia doesn't seem to care that much, telling him to get some sleep as she turns to leave. But he stops her, asking if she can help him with an urgent matter. Elia's face turns beet red, she definitely wasn't expecting him to ask her to go somewhere with him. Meanwhile, back in her office, Elnor is focused on wrapping up her paperwork. They've finished organizing the teaching materials for the day. Elnor listens as Yuria checks the records of the various aides and leaders. Yuria mentions a new student, Lilu Garuda, who's basically in exile seeking refuge at the academy. Yuria reads out the girl's name, sounding a bit concerned about the potential political fallout. Elnor listens silently, her eyes sharp and analytical as she considers the new arrival. There's even more news, a real saintess from the Holy Empire is scheduled to arrive next semester. Yuria adjusts her glasses, suspecting that Chancellor Atalanta Swansong might be pulling some strings. Elnor pauses her writing, weighing the implications of the saintess's arrival. She sets her pen down with a sharp click, her mind already moving several steps ahead. The two girls end up face to face, the air between them crackling with unspoken tension. Elia looks away, her expression unreadable as she passes the others. Dud tries to lighten the mood, telling the president that this place is always chaotic. Yuria Greyhounder is still stressing over the details, worrying about what's coming next. Outside, the moon is full, casting a cold glow over the academy's spires. Dud mentions a hidden observation deck he found within the school. He takes Elia up there, looking out over the beautiful night sky. But he's not just there for the view, he's got a device in his hand and a very specific plan. Elia's eyes go wide when she realizes he's serious about doing this in the middle of the night. Without another word, Dud jumps, pulling her right down with him. Elia screams in terror as they plummet through the dark air. They vanish into a massive, swirling red portal that opens up beneath them. Dud just grins, calling out for the portal to activate as they dive in. Elia is clutching him for dear life, her face a mask of pure panic. They streak across the sky like a shooting star, heading into another dimension. Far away from the chaos, a field of pink flowers sways in the wind under a clear blue sky. A young girl with long orange hair is sitting in the grass, sobbing her heart out. It's Elia, much younger, and she's calling someone a liar through her tears. A man with a familiar smile looks down at her, trying to play off whatever he said as a joke. She looks up at him with teary eyes, begging him to stop teasing her. He just laughs it off, bragging about how he might be promoted to an apprentice knight soon. Young Elia munches on her food, doubting that her brother can really become a guardian when he's always teasing her. As the sun sets over the mountains, she asks a question that's far too heavy for a child. If he goes to battle, will he die? Upset and scared, she lashes out, telling him she hopes he gets unlucky and dies because he's always making fun of her and fighting with his sword. Caliban just gives her a gentle, knowing smile, unfazed by his sister's childish anger. The two of them sit together on the grassy hill, small figures against the grand, fading light of the day. Present-day Elia wakes up slowly, the memory of that sunset and her brother still fresh in her mind. A creak from the door pulls her back to reality, and she peeks out to see what the commotion is about. Dud Campbell is standing there in a sharp academy uniform, looking incredibly sheepish as he offers an apology. He steps into the room to check on her, their earlier adventure having clearly left them both a bit exhausted. Dud Campbell is hauling this massive sack when Elia mentions she made sure to fill hers up too. She turns around and starts apologizing, saying she's sorry for keeping things from him. Right then, a system notification pops up. Looks like Elia's affection just hit level 4. Dud hits his knees, wondering why on earth she's being so dramatic about a simple job. She looks relieved now, standing there with a soft smile like a weight's been lifted. The scene cuts to them floating through a glowing, pink-tinted dimension together. Elia's got this really intense, focused look as they drift through the void. She seems to be struggling with the gravity shift, and they're running out of time. Dud just gives her a confident grin, explaining they've made it to the interdimensional realm. He decides to dive headfirst into the empty sky, sending Elia into a total panic. She stares after him, completely baffled by how he can be this reckless. Dud's just chilling upside down, telling her they have to climb even higher. Elia is convinced they're about to meet their end if they keep falling like this. This brings back a memory of her as a kid, barely hanging onto a ledge. In the memory, her grip finally gives out and she starts tumbling through the air. The poor girl is terrified, screaming as the ground rushes up to meet her. It's a terrifying drop, and she's falling fast with nowhere to turn. Someone screams her name, pulling her back into a different nightmare. Flashback again, this time she's in a burning village with someone yelling to run for the barn. A young Elia is standing in the middle of the flames, covered in blood and completely frozen. A woman in armor stands in front of her, telling the girl she'll take care of their parents while she hides. Elia reaches out and grabs her clothes, terrified of being left alone in the chaos. The woman looks back with a grim face, ordering her to stay hidden from the monsters. The kid is a total wreck, crying and bloodstained as the fire rages around her. She begs her not to leave, terrified of what happens if she loses the only person she has left. She shuts her eyes tight, wishing they could just escape this nightmare together. But she's left standing there, watching her only protector walk away into the flames. Her hand finally slips off the blue cape, and she's left all alone in the ruins, just a crying kid with nobody left to help. A hand suddenly reaches out and catches hers mid-air. It's Dud, pointing out that thanks to the weird gravity, they're actually falling pretty slowly. He looks at her with a calm smile, making sure she's steady in the drift. Elia just stares at him, stunned that someone actually caught her this time. They touch down on a floating island hovering high in the pink sky. Dud doesn't waste any time, grabbing a heavy bag and getting back to business. A strange, glowing green light starts pouring out of a hole in the ground. He turns back to her with a smirk, asking if she can finally see what's coming. Without a second thought, he leaps off the edge of the floating island. He's falling straight into a massive, dark pit lined with rows of razor-sharp teeth. He yells that it's a beast of the realm and it's time for them to make their move. The scale of this monster is insane, its mouth is massive enough to swallow them whole. Dud tells her they need to grab everything the creature drops, while Elia just looks completely bewildered. Elia is gagging, completely grossed out by all the monster drops that just dumped on her. They were inches away from becoming a snack for that massive interdimensional beast. A huge pillar of blue light signals their return as they crash back into reality. Dud lets out a sigh of relief, realizing his timing with the teleport card was perfect. He's still shaking a bit from the rush, asking her how she's feeling after that crazy stunt. Elia can't even answer yet, she's just hunched over trying to get her lungs working again. She looks him right in the eye, seriously wondering if he had this entire escape plan from the start. Then she hits him with the big question, why the hell didn't he mention they were going to a different realm? A system notification pops up with a warning, a villain is trying to win Dud over, and he needs to find a way out of it. Marquis Riverback stands firmly, leaning on his cane with a look that says he's in total control. As Dud and Elnor start to walk away, Dud stops, sensing the tension in the room is about to snap. A staff member steps in, informing Elnor that she'll be escorted to a separate VIP room for the evening. She glares at him, her red eyes burning with annoyance at being separated from Dud. Marquis Riverback sits back with a drink, watching the scene play out with a smug, satisfied grin. Dud doesn't mince words, calling out the Marquis for his predictable plan to revive some long-forgotten demon. He stays perfectly calm while sitting across from the man, despite knowing exactly what's about to happen. The Marquis admits that once he releases the monsters, his assassins will make quick work of the knights, but his confidence wavers when he realizes Dud is way ahead of him, and he starts to break a sweat. The Marquis begins to tremble, a dark shadow falling over his face as his carefully crafted plan falls apart. He grits his teeth in a silent rage, clearly pushed to his absolute breaking point. The scene shifts, and Elnor is already a blur of motion, her red dress stained as she cuts down anything in her path. She looks exhausted but determined, with blood splattered across her face from the initial clash. Just a moment ago, these guys were laughing and telling her she had somewhere else to be. She looks down, struggling to keep a lid on the madness that's clawing its way to the surface. One of the guards makes the fatal mistake of grabbing her shoulder while mocking the law. Her expression goes pitch black, a single glowing red eye piercing through the darkness as she loses control. That terrifying red glare is the last thing they see before the real slaughter begins. She launches herself at them like a demon, moving with speed that shouldn't even be possible. The men finally realize they've made a massive mistake, their faces contorted in pure, unadulterated panic. Elnor stands tall among the chaos, sword in hand as more guards try to close in on her. She doesn't give them a chance to regroup, charging forward as they desperately shout to follow the plan. A blinding flash of light erupts as her blade tears through the room. She pins one man's weapon down with her boot, leaving him completely defenseless. Her red eyes pulse with murderous intent, looking more like a monster than a person. With a single, fluid motion, she delivers a lethal slash that cuts her opponent down where he stands. The sheer force of her attack sends bodies flying across the hall like they're weightless. She dives through the air with both blades drawn, a literal whirlwind of steel and blood. She clashes with another guard, her glowing eyes locked onto his as he realizes his life is over. With one massive, sweeping swing, she finishes off the remaining guards in the hallway. Marquis Riverback watches from the sideline, his jaw dropping as he realizes his entire security force was just annihilated. Elnor stands in a pool of blood, looking back at Dud, who's still sitting there completely unfazed. She stares at him with an intense, heavy gaze, the madness still lingering in her eyes. Suddenly, a system window alerts Dud that he's caught the eye of the legendary Gideon La Tristan. He's genuinely confused, wondering why a powerhouse like Elnor's father would take any interest in a mere extra. Desperate and backed into a corner, the Marquis pulls out a pulsing red orb of demonic essence. Dud reaches out to stop him, knowing that using that stuff is a one-way ticket to a horrific transformation. Elnor looks on in shock as the Marquis prepares to throw away his humanity. Without hesitation, he tosses the essence into his mouth and swallows it whole. Outside the mansion, the night is eerily still under the light of the full moon. Then, the silence is shattered as a pillar of dark, corrupt energy explodes right through the roof. Dud gives instructions to the blonde server, telling him not to wear a specific uniform today and to make sure the other part-timers don't either. The server, looking a bit sweat-drenched and confused, simply nods and says he understands. Dud walks off with Elnor, looking determined while she follows closely behind him. Elnor stands tall in her dark red gown, her expression calm and regal as she stands beside Dud. A sharp sound echoes as a cane hits the floor, and a voice greets Lady Tristan. Marquis Riverback appears, his orange hair and beard matching his smug and calculating expression. Later, Dud meets with Yuria, who has messy dark blue hair and seems to be in the middle of a workout, sweating and holding a hair tie in her mouth. Dud smiles slightly, commenting that it's exactly what he thought it was. Yuria looks up, catching her breath as she listens to him. A large brown bag sits on the floor, presumably holding something important for their quest. Dud holds up a black card, explaining that they've entered a specific interdimensional realm. Yuria looks a bit overwhelmed, her expression showing her uncertainty about the situation. Dud looks a bit singed and disheveled, but he has a satisfied smile on his face. He looks over at Yuria, who is sitting on a mat, and thinks to himself that even though she's a witch, she's actually a total scaredy cat. Yuria looks at him, her expression a mix of exhaustion and curiosity. Dud tells her that instead of a present, he has a request to make of her. He reaches out and gently begins to tie her hair back for her. As he works, he asks her why she's so focused on getting stronger all of a sudden. Close-up of Yuria's eye. She seems to be thinking deeply about his question. She tells him that she also has a question for him. Meanwhile, a girl with purple hair and glasses is having a breakdown, crying about how the academy seems to revolve around her lately. The tall, ornate clock tower of the academy looms over the grounds under a clear blue sky. Yuria looks much neater with her hair tied up in a ponytail, a small smile appearing on her face. Dud rubs his head, looking a bit stressed out by the sheer weight of everything he has to deal with. As the sun sets, Dud thinks about how raising the synchronization rate will awaken a psychic entity that will be helpful later. Night falls over the town as the main quest for the Purifier arc begins to take center stage. Dud, now dressed in a sharp tuxedo, checks his system messages, which tell him to resolve an incident at the Eyes of Twilight. He finds Elnor waiting for him, looking stunning in her formal dress as the festival lights glow behind her. She applies a bit of lipstick, making sure she looks perfect for the evening. She tells him she hasn't been waiting long, only about 6 hours or so. Dud is speechless, realizing that she arrived before the sun even started to set. Elnor stands before him, her presence commanding attention even in the crowded festival grounds. She looks him in the eye, her expression soft but expectant. Dud looks away, blushing slightly as he admits this is his first time being with a girl off campus. Elnor takes his hand, her touch causing him to realize that this really is starting to feel like a date. They walk together through the festival, a striking couple that stands out from the crowd. They arrive at the Eyes of Twilight, which is just as packed with people as Dud expected it to be. He wonders if they'll even be able to get inside given how long the line is. Suddenly, the blonde server from before spots them and looks absolutely shocked to see them together. The server rushes over, a nervous grin on his face as he looks at Dud. Elnor glances over, wondering who this person is and why he's interrupting them. The server, sweating profusely, asks Dud what his relationship with the president is for them to be here together. Dud remains uncertain about his current situation, wondering if his time with the student council president is actually a date. Elnor uses her official status to gain entry, quickly, and the part-timer, Talion, quickly agrees to let them through. Before they go further, Dud's attention is caught by an item Talion is wearing, and he asks him about the necklace around his neck. The item is revealed to be a gold pendant, which Dud immediately links to the operation being run by Marquis Riverback. Dud starts putting the pieces together, asking if the Marquis is the one pulling the strings behind all this. The guy just stands there, sweat pouring down his face as the realization hits him. Dud tells him to get moving, and Talion doesn't need to be told twice, sprinting away from the encroaching monsters. Dud is still hacking up alone while Elnor stands guard by his side. Under the full moon, a swarm of monsters gathers, their silhouettes filling the street below. Then there's the Marquis. He's transformed into a massive war demon, with black tentacles sprouting like wings from his back. The demon growls, realizing he might not be able to shatter the entire protective barrier at once. He starts condensing pure demonic energy into a pitch-black orb between his claws. The whole area lights up as he prepares an attack powerful enough to blow everything to Kingdom Come. He spots them trying to shift positions and barks an order for them to stop right there. He's got way too many eyes and teeth to be human anymore. Dud just stares back, not looking intimidated in the slightest. He's still supporting Elnor, though she's practically begging him to just put her down so she can fight. They're trapped inside a hexagonal barrier while the demon looms over them like a vengeful god. Dud looks her right in the eye and tells her straight, they're both getting out of this alive. He trusts her to handle the fighting, which catches her off guard since she's used to carrying the weight alone. She grips her swords, reminding herself of the Tristan family dignity she has to uphold. She lunges forward, her blades clashing against the massive demon's hide in a burst of sparks. The impact sends out a shockwave that lights up the night sky. Dud starts running, shouting for the president to follow his lead. The Marquis isn't about to let them escape and starts firing off black energy bolts. One of the blasts catches Dud, sending him tumbling through the air. The demon is genuinely confused, wondering how a weakling like him is still conscious. Elnor takes the opening to close the distance, her sword ready to bite into the monster's flesh. She's just a tiny silhouette against the massive bursts of energy radiating from the demon. Dud ignores the pain and keeps sprinting, his face set in a look of grim determination. The Marquis looks down at him like he's a bug, demanding that the insect stop running and fight. Elnor is forced back, her hair falling over her face as she tries to catch her breath. The demon is practically salivating, thinking he's finally got them cornered. Then Elnor looks up with those glowing red eyes, clearly tired of his games. Dud gets blasted again, hitting the ground hard with blue sparks flying off him. Both of them are struggling now, getting tossed around by the sheer force of the demon's power. The Marquis charges up his finishing move, Fangs of Darkness. A massive spear of shadow hovers over Dud while he's pinned to the cracked earth. The demon promises to finish him off once and for all. Suddenly, a hand reaches up through the debris, and someone actually finds this hopeless situation marvelous. Dud pulls himself up, panting as he tries to find his footing amidst the rubble. The Marquis is obsessed with this prophet title, taunting Dud to see how he'll respond to certain death. His chest starts glowing with an ominous red light as he prepares one final, crushing strike. Dud just looks at the massive threat, thinking about how insane it is to fight a war demon this early in the story. A quest window pops up, officially tasking him with subduing the Purifier. The objective is simple: stop the demon and keep the number of casualties as low as possible. Just as things look desperate, the Marquis declares it's time for purification. Dud realizes the Marquis isn't the only problem they have to worry about right now. The demon worshippers that Elnor thought she finished are already getting back up. A whole horde of man-eaters swarms out of the shadows, ready to feast on anything that moves. A massive beam of green light tears through the monster ranks in a single flash. Dud watches the skill take effect, thinking the name is a bit too dramatic for his taste. Elnor is stunned, wondering where the Marquis went and why her fallen enemies are reviving. A guy in an apron is kneeling nearby, creepily asking for feedback on his latest technique. He tells her those monsters used to be her comrades, and she would have joined them if not for her necklace. A sudden burst of dark energy shatters the ground right between them. Dud watches in awe as a divine shield forms out of thin air to protect them. Elnor grips her bloody knife, telling Dud he needs to get up if they're going to survive this. The war demon Marquis just grins, enjoying every second of the carnage he's caused. Elnor stares him down, her resolve hardening even as she struggles to stay conscious. She thinks about how much she's taken from Dud, who always ends up being the one to protect her. In the distance, other Academy members can only watch as the chaos escalates. Dud calls on his hidden power, golden wings of light flaring out from his back. He's bloodied and battered, but his necklace gives him a much-needed boost of stamina to keep moving. Elnor doesn't waste the opening, her entire body crackling with a fierce red aura. The Marquis mocks them, asking if they've finally finished their little strategy meeting. He's a towering monster of darkness, completely unimpressed by their last-ditch effort. Elnor looks down for a moment, gathering every ounce of strength she has left. A massive shockwave hits, sending Dud tumbling backward into a fresh crater. Elnor lunges forward with a speed that defies the laws of physics, a streak of red in the dark. Her strike lands with bone-shattering force against the demon's massive chest. She slashes through the air, carving a star-shaped pattern of blinding light into the night. She moves like a lethal shadow, her sword a blur as she dances around the massive creature. A colossal explosion rocks the entire street, burying everything in a dense cloud of dust. The Marquis screams in absolute rage and pain, cursing Dud's name as he's forced to retreat. When the smoke finally clears, Elnor notes that the coward has already scurried away like a rat. A final bolt of energy streaks across the sky, clearing out the last of the monsters. The ground is littered with the bodies of the man-eaters, the threat finally neutralized. Gideon Gale's Tadla Tristan stands over the ruins, remarking on how lucky they were to survive. A purple-haired woman stands by his side, surveying the aftermath with a cold, sharp eye. Under the light of the full moon, they can't help but wonder if this was all just a series of coincidences. Dud is completely spent, clutching his chest as he struggles to get his breathing steady. He looks at the discarded launcher on the ground, the adrenaline finally fading to reveal the pain. Elnor is nearby, her body finally giving out after she pushed herself way past her limits. Suddenly, a voice addresses Dud, and the intense gaze of someone powerful locks onto him. The scene shifts, a dark claw lunges forward as the demon asks if he has any plans left. A sudden spike of shadow energy skewers Dud right through the midsection. Elnor can only watch in absolute horror as warm blood splatters across her face. Elnor watches in silent, tearful horror as the monstrous Marquis looms over them, his demonic power completely overwhelming. In his moment of greatest peril, a sudden notification flashes from the game system. Deadly charm has been triggered. Dud grits his teeth, his face contorted in agony as he struggles to stay conscious despite the massive blood loss. A second system window pops up, but it's a mess of glitched data. The identity of the target affected by his charm is something far beyond the system's control. A terrifyingly beautiful manifestation of Elnor's true demonic nature looms over him, her red eyes burning with a dark, obsessive hunger. Dud sinks to his knees as the ground cracks under the weight of her shadow, realizing that surviving the demon was just the beginning of his nightmare. It's a quiet day in the woods, with just the birds minding their own business in the sky. A chipmunk scurries across the ground, sensing that something is very wrong. Then a massive, fanged maw opens wide, ready to tear through the peace. Elnor looks totally spaced out, like she's not even in control of herself anymore. Suddenly, a dark shadowy spike pierces right through Dud's back. Elnor stands there with a manic grin, completely lost to her madness. Dud is in total shock. He didn't see an attack coming from her. He can feel his own power being ripped right out of his body by the shadow. The girl just smiles back, her red eyes glowing with a sinister light. It hits him, he's dealing with a literal fragment of the white demon. His deadly charm skill pops up, which apparently works better on the evil types. A dark, clawed hand reaches out and digs into his chest. Elnor doesn't let up, shoving the dark energy even deeper into him. She pulls him close as the darkness swirls violently around them both. A glowing, circular mark starts to burn itself right onto his skin. The system notifies him that he's officially acquired the mark of the fallen. Dud stares at the glowing brand on his chest, still reeling from the pain. Elnor watches him calmly, as if she didn't just try to rip his soul out. Knowing how strong she is makes this whole friendly act even creepier. A glitchy system window flickers into existence right between them. Elnor focuses on the screen, her expression turning dead serious. Her killing intent flares up, radiating a pressure that makes it hard to breathe. Dud winces, feeling like his very skin is being shredded by the aura. She points a finger toward the screen, communicating with the entity inside her. Then she's back to clapping and acting like nothing happened. Her body starts to pixelate as her presence in this form becomes unstable. She fades away completely, leaving behind a warning that they'll meet again soon. Her voice echoes one last time, promising to keep a close eye on him. But there's no time to relax as the Marquis returns in his full, demonic form. The monster slams down, unleashing a massive shockwave that tears up the earth. The war demon huffs and puffs, looking for any signs of life in the wreckage. A deep, smoldering crater is all that's left where he landed. He glares into the smoke, sensing something lurking in the dust. The beast is stunned to see someone is actually still standing after that hit. A massive pillar of light and energy shoots up from the center of the pit. The dust clears, revealing Dud standing firm amidst the destruction. The Marquis is losing it, wondering how a low-level extra is still alive. Dud holds his ground, his whole presence feeling different than before. His system starts redlining with warnings about his life being in danger. Desperate survival kicks in, pushing his potential up to EX rank. He activates Sovereign of Pandemonium, red energy flaring as his eyes glow. The Marquis is paralyzed with fear as Dud stares him down, ready for the kill. Dud doesn't give him a second to react, closing the gap in a heartbeat. The demon stutters out a title, calling him the Prophet while backed into a corner. A brutal strike lands, with red energy flaring from his fist as he connects. The Marquis tries to reach out, but he's already being completely overwhelmed. A massive explosion of power tears through the air as the blow hits home. Dud stands steady, the ground beneath him cracked and smoking from the force. The monster is sent reeling, his massive form looking surprisingly fragile now. He can barely huff out a sentence, his red core flickering with every labored breath. The impact was so violent it left a massive, steaming crater in the earth. The beast coughs up blood, finally realizing just how deep of a hole he's in. Dud is a dark silhouette against the sky, glowing with a terrifying aura. The Marquis is left wondering how this is even possible as his strength quickly fades. He demands to know how a human can use his own demonic power even better than he can. He collapses against the rocks, blood staining the broken ground around him. Dud looks down at his prey, his red eyes completely devoid of any mercy. Refusing to go down quietly, the demon slams his claws into the dirt to force a power-up. A system window explains he's burning through his essence to create a black mist. He receives the blessing of the Tar Soul, reinforcing his body for one last stand. The Marquis lets out a blood-curdling roar as he lunges back into the fray. Dud meets him head-on, red lightning crackling around his body as he dives. The demon's claws swipe at the air, but his target is already long gone. They clash in a massive explosion of light and shadow that shakes the entire area. Dud pushes through the shockwave, his face set in a look of cold determination. The sheer volume of energy creates a massive dome of destruction between them. They're moving so fast it's just a blur of red and blue energy tearing up the landscape. The Marquis is losing his mind, screaming insults as his pride is ground into the dirt. He puts every bit of his remaining strength into one final, desperate swing. But then, a massive pair of golden, angelic wings suddenly erupts from Dud's back. The beast is paralyzed, he can't believe he's seeing a human-wield literal divinity. Dud lunges forward, the golden feathers shining brightly against his dark aura. He delivers a crushing kick that shatters the demon's horns and sends him spinning. The force of the impact is so great it creates a vacuum as the Marquis is launched. He crashes through the ruins, a trail of destruction following his massive body. He's completely broken now, barely able to even think through the blinding pain. Dud is already in the air above him, ready to put a permanent end to this. The demon looks up, seeing his death coming in the form of a glowing red eye. Suddenly, a mechanical launcher left by a side character powers up on the field. Dud pulls out a remote, glad he decided to keep this particular piece of junk. The launcher fires a massive projectile right into the demon's exposed chest. The Marquis can only watch in horror as his life flashes before his eyes. A giant metallic barrel descends from above, aiming right for the final killing blow. Dud tells him his final words were lame before pulling the trigger on his handheld cannon. The Marquis' eyes go wide with final, desperate shock as the blast from the cannon hits him point blank. A massive pillar of light erupts from the impact, vaporizing everything in its path and signaling the end of the demon. I should have predicted all of this, the Marquis thinks bitterly as his massive, prideful form is reduced to dust. A system message chimes in the aftermath, confirming that Dud has officially completed the main quest. His eyes widen as he scrolls through the loot list, a demonic essence, a hero fragment, and 5,000 points. Dud is left breathless, staring at the screen and wondering if he really deserves such a massive haul for a single fight. Above the now quiet town, a beautiful, shimmering aurora stretches across the starry sky, marking the return of peace. Regardless of the danger he faced, Dud is satisfied. He finally has the tools he needs to derail the original plot. Watching from the sidelines is Atalanta Swansong, a sophisticated woman with dark teal hair and a mysterious monocle. But Dud's moment of relief is cut short as a cold, commanding voice demands a full explanation for the chaos he caused. Dud wakes up on a couch, only to find Chancellor Atalanta Swansong watching over him like a hawk. She starts explaining the Red Knight incident, a disaster caused by the Crimson Demon. Apparently, this demon fragment is a total wildcard, jumping into a random host in every version of the story. That means a different girl is fated to become a world-ending vessel every time the world restarts. Atalanta has been doing everything in her power to gather all these potential candidates right here at the academy. They sit in the quiet office as Dud tries to process the fact that he's surrounded by walking time bombs. Then she drops the real kicker. She believes true love is the only way to neutralize the demons. If the host finds a genuine connection, the demonic essence inside them is basically erased. It sounds like a cheesy fairy tale, but in this world, romance is a literal weapon for survival. Dud is just thinking about how much of a classic trope the power of love thing really is. But then Atalanta leans in, noting that the grey demon inside Elnor seems remarkably fond of him. He's completely caught off guard as the Chancellor gets right up in his personal space. She doesn't care about the logic behind it, only that Dud's presence is actually working. After seeing him in action, she's decided he's the perfect candidate for a high-stakes mission. She shows him one of the vessels, a girl who looks like she could command an entire empire without blinking. Every candidate they've identified so far is a powerful woman with the potential to destroy everything. She asks him point-blank if he thinks he can handle seducing all of them to save the world. If he can make them all fall for him, the apocalypse is officially cancelled. Dud is losing it. She's basically ordering him to be a professional player for the sake of humanity. He stands up, looking absolutely done with this entire conversation. Honestly, all he wants to do right now is find a logout button and leave this nightmare behind. He asks the obvious question: what happens if he fails to make these girls fall in love? The alternative is a literal empire of evil where demons rule over the wreckage of the world. So it's either a dangerous harem or total annihilation. Great choices. Atalanta isn't letting him off the hook yet. She wants a full explanation of what he knows about the Grey Demon. Dud tries to play it cool, but he knows she's already figured out he's not just some normal student. She looks down at him, knowing full well he's already deep in it with a demon. Elsewhere, Elnor is in critical condition, hooked up to an oxygen mask and a bunch of tubes. She's hanging by a thread in a hospital bed, her body battered from the recent fight. She finally opens an eye, looking dazed and clearly struggling to stay conscious. Back in the office, Atalanta's sharp gaze is fixed on Dud, not letting a single detail slide. They sit across from each other in a tense standoff, neither one willing to back down. Dud realizes his dream of living as a background extra is officially dead and buried. The Chancellor explains that the Grey Demon is the strongest of all the rulers of Pandemonium. It's a terrifying entity that would usually mean an immediate game over for any player. She actually thanks him for protecting the school and keeping Elnor from losing control. Dud gets so spooked he nearly tumbles right off the couch, sending his cane flying. He looks up at her, realizing he's just been drafted into the world's most dangerous dating sim. She warns him that one fragment is already here, and the others will naturally be drawn to whoever holds it. In the quiet of the infirmary, a fresh bouquet of flowers sits by a sunlight-drenched bed. A red eye snaps open as someone finally starts to wake up. Elnor sits up in the hospital bed, wondering where she is and how she's even still alive. Elnor finally wakes up in the infirmary, her red eyes looking heavy and dazed. She's still hooked up to N4, sitting alone in the large, quiet hospital room. Just then, a teacher with round glasses walks in, completely shocked to see Elnor sitting up already. She rushes over to the bed, fussing over her and wondering what she should even do with a student this stubborn. Elnor just leans against her, looking like she's completely drained of all her energy. Her mind flashes back to the fight in the state Dud was in, bloody, battered, but still standing. She sits up, her gaze hardening as she starts to process everything that happened. The instructor adjusts her glasses, trying to maintain her composure while dealing with her most difficult student. She tells Elnor just how close she came to death, her voice full of genuine concern. Meanwhile, the Holy Empire's delegation has arrived at the academy, their banners flying high. Elnor remains lost in thought, her hand resting on her chin as she weighs her next move. The teacher turns her attention back to her paperwork, likely filing a report on the whole disastrous incident. Elnor asks about a specific person, her curiosity cutting through her exhaustion. Her memories are still a bit of a blur, filled with images of dark shadows and spilled blood. She remembers a terrifying figure from her past, a man surrounded by darkness and wielding a glowing blade. Meet Gideon Galestad La Tristan, Elnor's father. He's an imposing man with swept-back silver hair and piercing red eyes. Just thinking about him seems to put her on edge, even while she's still recovering. The sun shines over the academy city, but there's a heavy sense of anticipation in the air. In a dark room elsewhere, a silhouette watches the city, feeling like the lively atmosphere is out of place. Lucian, the saintess of the Holy Empire, sits calmly while smoking a long, elegant pipe. The young boy king, Valcasus, stands by the window, finding it funny how uncomfortable she is with the light. Lucian doesn't miss a beat, telling him he'd feel the same if he spent his life in a dark chapel. Valcasus just smirks, noting that the conversation is taking a pretty dark turn for a saintess. She ignores his teasing, simply asking him to close the window and block out the world. Valcasus looks back at her, his expression unreadable as they discuss their hidden agendas. He looks out at the city one last time, clearly enjoying the temporary peace before things get chaotic. Lucian makes it clear that they're only working together because they have a common goal, not because they're friends. She takes another long pull from her pipe, her expression cold and calculated. Valcasus asks if she's feeling a little anxious about their upcoming meeting. She considers his words, her mind always 5 steps ahead of everyone else in the room. The smoke curls around her as she stays focused on the fate that's clutching onto her life. She tells Valcasus he can think whatever he wants, but she has no intention of being anyone's puppet. Summer is rolling into the academy, and the heat is already starting to pick up. Inside the classroom, students are just trying to get through their daily lessons in this weather. Atalanta mentions that with the harvest season close, they won't be able to leave the grounds for a while. Elias just chilling with a lollipop, looking completely unbothered by the rising temperature. Outside, the instructors are watching as the students head out for their training sessions. A group of guys are lined up in their gear, looking pretty serious about the upcoming practice. Elnor is busy handling her student council duties when she gets stopped for a quick chat. Someone jokes that it's about time her father saw his grandkids' faces, talk about a high-pressure comment. Meanwhile, a letter arrives for Dud from his father, Armin Campbell. Dud reads it and is honestly just relieved to find out his old man isn't showing up. He looks up from the letter to see a new kid standing there, asking if he's some kind of servant in training. This is Herman. He's got a huge grin and seems way too enthusiastic for a guy in a suit. Next thing you know, Dud is lounging on a bench while Herman serves him seedless grapes. The other students are definitely judging him, thinking he's just pretending to be a noble. Dud doesn't care. He's just checking in with his new butler to see how he's settling in. Herman's already making himself comfortable, snacking on the grapes he was supposed to be serving. But Dud can't really relax, his mind is still stuck on the bombshell the Chancellor dropped earlier. Atalanta's talk about the demon vessels has completely messed with his plan for a quiet life. A system window pops up, the first stage of Elnor's inheritance of the cursed quest is now live. It's not just her, there's a curiosity quest involving her father, Gideon Tristan, too. Dud's starting to realize that his life as an extra is officially over. Then the system drops the big one, a main quest for the boy king of a ruined country. That's the boss for the second chapter, and it's a massive problem for someone with his current stats. He's trying to figure out how to deal with Gideon, a guy he never even met in the original game timeline. He sits on the bench with his head in his hands, feeling the weight of the whole world on him. In the original story, Gideon was supposed to be a corpse by now. Elnor was meant to be the one standing over him, having finally lost her mind to the curse. Seeing that look in her eyes, he knows he has to stop that future from happening. Nearby, a blonde student sees Dud looking stressed and starts panicking. He's terrified that the monster teacher is about to snap and go on a rampage right here. But the timeline is shifting, and Elnor is already starting to act differently. The thought of Gideon is still terrifying. He's a legend who could end things with a single look. Dud realizes that if they want to survive the boss of Chapter 2, he has to change the narrative himself. He catches the blonde student picking on Herman and decides to step in immediately. He points a finger and tells the guy that since he messed with his butler, he's taking his sword for the day. The student is so spooked he drops to his knees and offers the wooden blade without a fight. Elnor shows up right as he's dealing with the bully, watching the whole scene with interest. She draws her own rapier, looking like she's ready to show him what real swordsmanship is about. It's a rare moment for the busy student council president to actually stop and deal with him. Elia spots the two of them together and looks absolutely stunned by what she's seen. Dud tries to play it cool, acting like he's just a guy who uses both hands for combat. But Elnor shuts him down, telling him that the weapon doesn't matter as much as who's teaching him. Elia is all smiles, but you can tell she's ready to throw down. Elnor's eyes glow a deep red. She's taking this fight very seriously. Elia draws her practice sword, pointing out that even the Tristan family's skills have their gaps. Dud is just standing there, trying to keep his distance from the trouble he started. The two girls face off, their power aura practically cracking the floor between them. Elia locks her eyes on the president, her expression hardening as she prepares her move. Elnor keeps her rapier ready, perfectly calm in the middle of all that tension. Dud is just watching in disbelief. He thought they were supposed to be teaching him, not fighting each other. Before he can even finish the thought, Elia leaps into the air and swings her sword down with everything she's got. Elnor effortlessly leans back, dodging the heavy strike with inches to spare. Elia doesn't stop there, letting out a yell as she tries to keep the momentum going. But Elnor just watches her coolly, noting that her movements are way too big to be effective. Another horizontal swing comes in, and Elnor just ducks under it like it's nothing. Elia's eyes are wide with focus, but she's clearly starting to feel the pressure of the fight. Elnor finally blocks a strike with the flat of her blade, the impact sending a shockwave through the air. She tightens her grip on her rapier, ready to end this little demonstration. Elia pushes back with all her strength, but she's barely holding her own against Elnor's defense. Elnor moves in a blur of purple light, circling around to deliver a counterstrike. Elia is sweating now, her wooden sword looking like a toothpick compared to Elnor's speed. She gets sent sliding across the stone tiles as the weight of her opponent's power sinks in. Elnor's red eyes are cold and predatory, showing exactly why people fear her bloodline. A powerful slash sends purple energy flying everywhere, completely overwhelming the area. Elia is left thinking about the family of demons and the massive gap between their abilities. Elnor stands tall, her expression as icy as ever after the exchange. Elia stares into the darkness, hearing a voice telling her that eventually, the demon will consume her too. A vision of a figure standing amidst a sea of flames flashes before her eyes, a dark omen of what's to come. She looks completely horrified, realizing that they might all just be sacrifices for something far worse. Her eye reflects the sheer terror of the vision she just had. Elnor walks away, her aura still burning bright and intimidating as she leaves. Dud is just standing there with his jaw on the floor after witnessing that level of violence. Elnor turns her attention back to him, looking completely unfazed by the intense clash. A massive shockwave of energy clears the area, signaling the end of the lesson. Elia snaps back to reality and starts apologizing to the student Dud had been messing with. Later that night, Dud is out in the woods wearing a mask, replaying the fight in his head. He realizes that if he wants to survive this game, he needs to master holy energy alongside his sword skills. He approaches a secluded area and greets someone he's been looking for. It's Yuri, a greyhounder, sitting alone in a secret grove and quietly munching on an apple. She looks up at the masked intruder with a mix of surprise and silent curiosity. Despite the chains draped over her, she seems remarkably calm in her forced isolation. The memory begins with a man's scream as he faces his final moments. Corpses and skeletons pile up while a cruel voice echoes through the darkness. Meet Yuri, a greyhounder, a girl with messy black hair and amber eyes who looks completely lost in this living nightmare. A dark silhouette looms over her, claiming that any shred of hope will only lead to more pain. Yuria walks away, swallowed by a landscape stained blood red. A heavy executioner's blade drips with fresh blood, hanging by cold, heavy chains. The voice mockingly compares her to her own sister. Blood starts dripping from her nose as the psychological weight becomes too much to bear. She looks like she's on the verge of a total breakdown. The man calls her nothing more than a cursed amulet meant for a singular purpose. He reminds her that her only duty is to remain alone until the end. Yuria wakes up shivering and covered in sweat from the vivid memory. In the present day, she lives in total isolation within a secluded grove. She makes her way back to her campsite, carrying a small basket of apples. Dud Campbell arrives and casually asks her how she's been doing. Yuria looks back, her amber eyes wide with genuine surprise at his presence. The two engage in a sudden spar, with Yuria lashing out with her heavy chains. Masked and dressed in all black, Dud prepares to parry her next strike. He dives forward, intentionally entering what she considers her lethal attack range. She's stunned that he'd jump straight into such a dangerous position. The chains slam into the ground, barely missing him as he maneuvers past. Dud flips through the air, keeping his focus locked on his opponent. Yuria grits her teeth, determined to land a solid hit on him. He narrowly dodges a spinning blade attached to the end of her chain. Dud catches his breath, his mask slightly shifted from the intensity of the fight. He lands smoothly and sheathes his weapon, signaling the end of the spar. Yuria stares at him, her confusion visible despite the hair covering her face. He asks her if she's really forgotten who he is already. She stands frozen as her heavy chains fall limp to the ground. Dud gives her a small, knowing smile from behind his mask. Another memory flashes back, the cruel voice telling her she'll be alone until death. She remembers being abandoned in a dark, cold, and empty hall. Back in the present, she watches him as he reaches out. He pulls out a fresh baguette and offers it to her. Her weapon and chains lie forgotten in the dirt beside her. She takes the bread, her hands trembling as she looks at it. A small, genuine smile breaks through her tears as she looks up at him. A system notification pops up. His deadly charm has significantly increased her interest level. Dud stares at his hands, completely bewildered by the sudden game prompt. Later that morning, he checks his new rewards while still half asleep. He's managed to unlock the Tristan sword technique, giving him a massive boost in combat. His servant panics, urging him to hurry before they're officially late for the Academy event. The Grand Elefante Academy towers over the arriving crowd for the big tournament. Inside, the massive arena is packed with students ready for the chaotic free-for-all. Standing tall is Gideon Galestad La Tristan, a man known to only appear when war is about to break out. His presence is so terrifying that nobody dares to even approach him, leaving him in a bubble of silence. A student with short green hair and a scar over his eye chats with Dud as they wait for their turn. The guy mentions he's training his physical body so he can eventually make the mountains his own. Gideon scoffs, calling that a primitive approach compared to how he once literally cut a mountain down. A sharp feedback screech from the microphone signals the start of the official opening. The green-haired student warns Dud that this year's freshmen are on a completely different level. An energetic announcer girl takes the stage, telling everyone to enter with their wooden weapons. A blonde guy with a headband is practically buzzing with excitement, thinking he's got the top spot secured. Elia Crixinax watches from the sidelines, her eyes fixed on Dud with visible concern. Students scramble to grab their wooden practice swords, each one hoping to be the last man standing. The announcer explains that the top 10 will receive special points, but only the winner gets the real prize. Elia tries to stay calm, but she's already prepared to jump in if Dud gets into real trouble. Elnor Elinorize La Tristan looks on from the stands, her silver hair flowing as she maintains her cold composure. The announcer raises a hand and gives the final signal for the battle royale to begin. Immediately, the arena erupts into a mess of flying magic, wooden blades, and desperate shouts. One girl makes a move, slicing through the air with her practice sword in a flurry of motion. Suddenly, a hooded figure with purple hair tears through the crowd, leaving a pile of defeated students in her wake. A student takes a hit to the face, gritting his teeth as he tells Dud he won't be holding back anymore. Dud is immediately swamped, forced to dodge a rain of wooden strikes coming from all directions. He finds himself face to face with the aggressive blonde rival who's determined to prove his worth. Dud raises his wooden sword to block a heavy overhead strike, the force vibrating through his arms. From his high vantage point, Gideon's sharp red eyes track Dud's every movement with an analytical gaze. Suddenly, the purple-hooded girl Lilu Garuda leaps into the center of the fray with a wild, toothy grin. She doesn't even use a weapon, smashing a student face-first into the floor with her bare hands. Lilu looks completely unhinged, her eyes glowing red as she dares everyone to come at her. Both Dud and his opponent freeze, realizing a true monster has just entered the game. Elia and Elnor both look on with growing alarm as Lilu starts tearing through the remaining students. Dud recognizes her technique as tribal arts, a brutal skill used for massive physical enhancement. The clashing of wooden swords creates sparks in the air as students try to stay out of Lilu's path. Dud takes a moment to catch his breath, his body already feeling the strain of the high-speed combat. The blonde rival is still shouting about taking first place, completely oblivious to the threat right behind him. A system message pops up. Dud's focus of the swordsman's skill has activated, sharpening his senses. Lilu reaches out with a clawed hand, grabbing the rival's shoulder like he's nothing more than a ragdoll. The poor guy barely has time to let out a sound of terror as Lilu's shadow looms over him. She unleashes a massive, sweeping kick that creates a visible shockwave across the arena floor. Multiple students are sent flying through the air like ragdolls, their wooden weapons shattered. The blonde rival is left coughing and broken as Lilu looms over him, laughing like a maniac. Dud finds himself standing alone in a pile of defeated students as Lilu casually scratches her head nearby. Without warning, she lunges at him, her kick carrying enough power to shatter anything in its path. Lilu Garuda unleashes a terrifying flurry of punches, her speed blurring as she closes in on her target. Dud grits his teeth, barely managing to block the overwhelming force of her assault. Suddenly, she stops, staring at Dud with wide, curious eyes as if realizing something unusual about him. The match ends abruptly, and she bites her lip in frustration, her bloodlust still unsatisfied. She lets out an angry shout, clearly disappointed that her fun was cut short. A system prompt appears, warning Dud that his deadly charm has paved the way for a chaotic future relationship. Sometime later, a thick sack is yanked off Dud's head by an unseen hand. He blinks as the light hits his eyes, finding himself sitting in a luxurious, dimly lit room. Across from him, Gideon Galestad La Tristan demands to know the exact nature of Dud's relationship with Elnor. Gideon's cold, red eyes pierce through him, demanding the truth without a hint of mercy. The archduke calmly sets down his tea, his tone shifting as he asks if Dud has followed through on his investigations. Dud recalls the intense sparring from earlier, where he had to use every ounce of his new strength to survive. Gideon doesn't let up, ordering Dud to reveal the source of the advanced techniques he displayed during the match. Dud's pulse quickens, but he knows he must keep his composure to avoid Gideon's suspicion. Gideon stands and turns away, his hands clasped behind his back as he looms over the room. He waits in a heavy silence, giving Dud one last chance to explain himself. Sweating under the archduke's gaze, Dud prepares to deliver a carefully constructed lie. He claims a mysterious, cloaked figure gave him a secret task, hoping the vague story will satisfy the powerful man. Archduke Gideon remains stoic, his imposing presence looming over Dud as the interrogation reaches its peak. Dud sits in a plush chair, looking incredibly small compared to the man standing before him. Gideon Galestad La Tristan, a man with cold silver hair and piercing red eyes, stares him down with terrifying intensity. Dud tries to keep a poker face, but his eyes betray the sheer panic he's feeling. He's mentally screaming, wondering how on earth he's supposed to take responsibility for saving the archduke's daughter. The sweat starts to bead on his forehead as the silence in the room becomes unbearable. Gideon raises a single hand, pointing a finger directly at at the boy. He tells Dud that since he meddled in Elnor's business, he's the one who has to deal with the consequences. Dud can barely process what's happening. Responsibility? For what? Gideon locks eyes with him, his expression turning even more intense as he lets out a single word. A sudden, invisible force slices through the teacups on the table without a sound. Tea splashes right into Dud's face, the liquid flying through the air like a spray of bullets. He leaps out of his seat, knocking the chair over as he desperately tries to get away from the killing intent. Dud's eyes go wide in shock. He didn't even see a sword move, yet something just cut through the room. This is Gideon's legendary shapeless blade, a technique that strikes without warning or form. He realizes he's dealing with a man who reached the pinnacle of swordsmanship long ago. Thinking fast, Dud decides to gamble on a piece of hidden knowledge from the game's original story. He recalls a memory of a hooded man, the mentor who once taught a young Gideon everything he knew. The master's smirk was the same one Gideon would eventually adopt, a look of absolute confidence. Dud thinks back to the young Gideon, a man who once struggled just like anyone else. He looks the present-day legend in the eye, ready to drop a line that shouldn't be possible for him to know. He recites the exact advice the master gave Gideon, that a perfect strike starts with a perfect image in the head. Gideon's eyes drift shut as the words hit home. It's a piece of advice from his own past, something he hasn't heard in years. When he snaps his eyes open, the shock is written all over his face. The killing intent vanishes, and a massive crack splits the wall behind him from the sheer pressure of his aura. Gideon's red eyes sparkle with a sudden, intense curiosity about this boy. Dud plays it off with a polite smile, claiming he just wants the great archduke to keep getting stronger. The gamble pays off perfectly. He's handed a seal of immunity, a document that makes him untouchable by the law. Dud looks over the pass, realizing he just secured a golden ticket for all the chaos he's about to cause. He watches Gideon walk away, his system interface marking the archduke as a person of extreme interest. Later that night, Dud returns to his dorm, finding his roommate passed out and snoring away. A new system window pops up, announcing an enhancement to his fated attraction gift. It turns out that whenever a villain he's attracted to gains a skill, he can borrow it for himself. He looks at the sword on his desk, the moonlight reflecting off the cold steel. A small, determined smile plays on his lips. He might actually survive this. Looking at a picture of his loved ones, he promises himself that he will protect them, no matter what. The scene shifts to the academy, where a professor is pointing at complex diagrams on a chalkboard. The students look like they're about to keel over from boredom, barely following the lecture on holy energy. The lecture hall is almost completely empty, which is driving the professor absolutely crazy. He rants about how the recent mess with Confronting Riverback has turned the whole school upside down. Elia Crixenax sits in the front row with a stern look, while a student behind her has a complete meltdown. Dud just leans back in his seat, looking like he's lived through 10 lifetimes in just a few days. This professor is grinning, thinking his plan to desert the empire and ditch his students is flawless. He believes this will be his final act at the academy. Before he can even leave, a powerful kick slams the door right into him. He falls to the floor, shouting about who would dare strike a faculty member. Elnor Elinorize La Tristan enters the room, her presence filling the space with an icy pressure. She pins him down with a boot, her gaze promising a painful end to his teaching career. The professor groans, clutching his head as he tries to figure out how he was caught. He's tied to a chair in seconds, despite his protests that everyone has gone mad. Elnor and Dud Campbell stand over him, officially placing him under arrest. He tries to play it off as a misunderstanding, demanding to know what authority they have. Elnor leans in close, revealing they know he's just a spy playing a role. Seeing the game is up, the man drops his act and lets out a frustrated snarl. Dud checks his watch, giving him a strict deadline to start talking. He wants the names of every other spy hidden within the academy walls. Elnor looks ready to kill, her red eyes glowing with lethal intent. The spy is already breaking, blood dripping from his nose as the pressure mounts. They find a list of names, likely identifying his co-conspirators. Dud places a hand on the man's head, his system ability activating with a bright golden light. He's focusing on mastering this power, taking every opportunity to practice. The tied-up professor looks terrified, realizing Dud is far more dangerous than he looks. Elnor watches the process with a stoic expression, letting the magic work. Suddenly, the spy erupts with a dark, purplish energy, screaming that he won't be taken easily. He lunges at Dud, breaking his bonds and shouting about joining the military. Elnor doesn't hesitate, swinging her blade in a lethal arc. A solid blow connects with his face, cutting his scream short. He is sent flying back, the impact cracking the stone wall behind him. Dud calmly sorts through the recovery documents, ignoring the sudden violence. The former professor collapses into the rubble, gasping for air. He's barely conscious now, his eyes glazed as his plans crumble into dust. Dud notes the man's resemblance to a contact he found during the Riverback investigation. He stands over the fallen spy as the room finally goes quiet. The guy looks up with one last look of pure shock before fading out. A system notification pops up. Dud's mastery over holy energy has increased. Elnor sheathes her blade, her breathing steady as if she hadn't just ended a fight. Another message reveals that her madness trait has actually started to improve. Dud picks up a small pendant from the floor, examining the artifact. Elnor breaks the silence by casually mentioning hearing that he met with her father. Dud freezes, a look of pure dread crossing his face at the mention of Gideon. He barks out a frantic denial, insisting that everything is perfectly fine. He gives her a shaky smile, trying to hide how much that meeting traumatized him. He can still feel the weight of those terrifying red eyes burning into him. Elnor just gives him a knowing look, letting the subject drop as she adjusts her cap. Dud Campbell walks down the quiet hallway, his mind already on the next phase of his plan. He leaves the captured spy behind, knowing there are bigger threats to prepare for. He looks down at the soul link on his wrist as the system announces the start of the midterm survival season. He has gathered enough holy energy to finally wake the spirit of the pavilion, a crucial step in his strategy. He closes his eyes and focuses, pouring all his gathered energy into the blue gem on his glove. He takes a shaky breath, praying that the spirit he summons is someone he can actually work with. A brilliant explosion of golden light fills the room, marking the arrival of a powerful being. The silhouette of a massive, armored warrior begins to take shape within the radiance. Dud stares in shock, sweating as he realizes just how much holy energy he actually used. A man with long, vibrant orange hair stands before him, clad in shining white armor. The system confirms his identity. This is Caliban Crixinax, the Guardian of Dawn. Dud's face twists into a comical look of panic as he realizes the scale of the spirit he's summoned. A vision of a destroyed town appears, the ruins a grim reminder of a past catastrophe. A young Elia Crixinax stands in the center of the wreckage, looking small and vulnerable. Tears stream down her face as she surveys the aftermath of the Red Night incident. A cracked family portrait lies abandoned in the dirt, a symbol of a life lost forever. The young girl stands amidst the rubble, her world completely shattered by the loss of her home. She recalls her brother's kind face, a memory that remains bright despite the darkness around her. Her father's steady gaze is another precious memory from before everything was taken away. She remembers her mother's smile, clinging to the love she once knew. But the truth is cold. Every death is a tragedy that leaves a permanent scar on those left behind. The young Elia cries out in agony, the weight of her grief almost too much to bear. Years later, she pushes through her pain, training with a wooden sword and a fierce resolve. She has grown into a powerful warrior, her eyes filled with the determination of a true hero. The academy towers in the background as the survivors of the Red Night now train to fight back. Elia stands with her fellow students, ready to lead them against the rising tide of darkness. She knows the demons and their worshippers are still out there, waiting for their chance to strike. Back in the present, Dud looks Caliban in the eye and tells him that his sister is alive and well. Elia walks through the school with Lucian, her cheerful demeanor a mask for her inner strength. Dud sits on a hill beside the armored spirit of the hero's brother, having a quiet moment. Caliban looks down with a soft smile, relieved to know his sacrifice wasn't in vain. He gazes at a vision of Elia, amazed at how much she has grown as a warrior and a leader. He turns back to Dud with a serious expression, asking if the extra is truly ready to cooperate. He makes a heartfelt request for Dud to stay by Elia's side and keep her safe. Dud looks at the current Elia, feeling the immense weight of the responsibility he's just taken on. He clears his throat awkwardly, trying to change the subject to the upcoming midterm groups. Elia looks at him with a surprised expression, confused by his sudden change in attitude. Elnor's attendant doesn't look too happy with how things are playing out right now. Dud tries to strike up a friendly conversation, but she isn't making it easy for him. She lets out a tired sigh, clearly frustrated by his presence. Nearby, a rowdy student with red hair shoves a classmate toward Dud, shouting for him to just take her. Dud laughs it off, joking about borrowing her if she's so intent on finding a way to beat him. The girl lets out a startled scream as she's practically thrown into the group. The dust settles to show Marquis Riverback's body face down in the dirt after the intense battle. One of the students looks on with a nervous expression, realizing their group dynamic is about to change. As the chaos of the battlefield fades, Dud heads toward the Academy's Grand Clock Tower. He finds himself in the office of Atalanta Swansong, the Chancellor, who's watching him with a keen eye. Dud maintains a polite facade, though he knows this meeting is far from a social call. Atalanta leans in, noting that everyone, even a saintess, has a lot to learn about the harsh realities of the world. She brings up Yuria Greyhounder, the cursed twin sister of the saintess who's currently in hiding. Dud listens quietly, processing the fact that he's being tasked with something much bigger than survival. The Chancellor explains that the saintess, Lucian, is a crucial symbol for both the Empire and the Church. She watches him through her monocle, gauging if he's the right person for this dangerous job. Dud points out that the high-ranking officers are worried about the saintess's current condition. A vision of Lucian appears, the blonde saintess who looks calm, yet somehow fragile. Knowing he's already said enough, Dud tells her he'll share more details when the time is right. Atalanta is momentarily stunned, realizing this extra knows far more than he should. The saintess's sharp, golden eyes seem to pierce through the very air. With his business concluded, Dud begins to vanish, his form pixelating into the air. Once he's gone, Atalanta slumps over her desk, cursing under her breath at the stress he's caused. A leaf ripples the surface of a quiet pool, signaling a shift in the scene. Deep in a secluded grove, Yuria Greyhounder sits by a stream, washing her clothes in silence. She stares blankly at the water, wondering why her only visitor is late today. Dud finally shows up, but he's wearing a mask and dark gear to keep his identity hidden from any prying eyes. Yuria focuses on wringing out a wet cloth, trying to hide how much she's been waiting for him. She thinks to herself that just having someone like him spend time with her is more than enough. Looking at the fish swimming by, she assumes he's only here because he's bored of his own life. Masked Dud leans in close, asking if she's already forgotten the resolve it took for her to escape her fate. He reminds her that the isolation and the curse are the path she chose for herself. The harsh truth hits her hard, and Yuria's heart begins to pound against her ribs. She drops her laundry and falls to her knees, clutching her chest as her emotions start to spiral. His reflection in the water seems to mock her, asking who would ever come for someone as broken as her. Tears stream down her face as she realizes her complete dependence on this mysterious visitor. Then, he pulls out a brown bag. It's just a simple snack he brought alone. The sudden act of kindness makes Yuria's face light up with a mix of relief and pure joy. A system notification pops up, showing her interest in him has jumped from a mere acquaintance to something much deeper. Panicking, she asks if he's already bored of her, terrified that he might stop coming. She throws her weapon aside and promises she'll do absolutely anything he wants. Dud just stands there with his bag of cookies, realizing he's accidentally created a monster of obsession. Yuria is a complete mess, sobbing and begging Dud not to leave her alone in the dark. She lunges after him, her frantic screams echoing through the forest. Dud clenches his fist, realizing he's accidentally turned a simple survival plan into a full-blown obsession. Back at the academy, the battle royale is underway, with students hunting each other for points and necklaces. Elia Crixinax watches from the sidelines, sensing a strange, heavy tension in the air. Dud tries to play it cool, exhaling a long sigh of relief as he slips back into his normal student persona. But then there's Yuria, who's standing there blushing while wearing a metal collar and literal chains. Dud is sweating bullets, desperately trying to think of any excuse that doesn't sound completely insane. She mumbles that she actually feels a lot safer and more comfortable being bound like this. From a distance, Elia catches a glimpse of the bizarre display and her mind immediately goes to the worst place. She starts picturing all sorts of perverted, twisted scenarios that she's sure Dud is into. A nearby rabbit bolts into the bushes, sensing that things are about to get very weird. Meanwhile, Talion watches as his defeated teammates are hauled away, guessing that a tribal transfer is to blame. He leans on his spear, reminding them that they'd be out of the game already if it weren't for his barrier spells. One of the students is furious, shouting that they should take this chance to go after the fraudster from the country. The aftermath of the skirmish is a total mess of bodies in broken gear. One of the guys stares up at the sky, his face battered and his pride clearly wounded. A sharp pair of blue eyes narrows. It's Lilu Garuda, and she's already looking for her next target. She steps over a fallen body, wondering how people can be so weak when their lives are on the line. Shadowed by her own dark thoughts, she questions what it even means to truly fight for survival. She doesn't have to wait long for an answer as she clashes head-on with Elnor Illinois. Elnor's red eyes meet Lilu's blue ones as they trade blows in a blur of motion. Lilu smashes through the earth, her power ripping up the terrain as she hunts for an opening. Her face lights up with a crazed, ecstatic look. She's finally found someone worth fighting. Elnor stands tall in her black military uniform, looking like the absolute final boss she is. Lilu lets Elnor's blade rest right against her forehead, grinning like a maniac at the sensation. She steps right into the kill zone, practically daring the silver-haired princess to slay her. A tiny trickle of blood runs down her face, but Lilu doesn't even blink. She lets out a loud, wild laugh, clearly getting a rush from being so close to the edge. Elnor's gaze is dead and cold, her single red eye visible beneath the brim of her cap. Lilu leans in even closer, her expression shifting from bloodlust to a strange kind of admiration. Behind Elnor, a massive, demonic shadow begins to rise, manifesting her inner madness. Suddenly, Lilu freezes as the sheer weight of that power finally starts to crush her spirit. Her eyes go wide and her jaw drops as she realizes the sheer scale of the power she's dealing with. She barely manages to leap away as a massive shockwave of energy tears through the air. Elnor watches her with absolute boredom while Lilu's face is twisted with a mix of terror and joy. Before Lilu can even find her footing, Elnor's boot comes crashing toward her face. Lilu's eyes shrink in shock as she realizes she can't possibly move in time to avoid it. Elnor lands gracefully, her long silver hair flowing behind her as she finishes the move. The impact sends Lilu skidding across the floor, her body tumbling like a ragdoll. She slams into the ground, gritting her teeth as she struggles to stay conscious. Elnor stands over her with absolute disdain, her red eyes glowing with a dangerous light. A system notification blinks into existence, warning Dud that the blue-haired fighter Lilu Garuda has taken a keen interest in him. Masked Dud, in his prophet persona, leaps out of the blast zone, cursing his luck that he's already being targeted by powerful rivals. Elia Crixinax watches the chaos from a distance, her brow furrowed as she tries to make sense of the sudden explosions rocking the arena. Yuria Greyhounder, her jet-black hair and golden eyes filled with intensity, becomes a blur of violence as she slams into a group of students. One of the boys is sent tumbling backward, gasping for air as Yuria's ferocious strength completely overwhelms him. Elia is left breathless by the display of raw power, while Dud sighs in relief that the focus has shifted away from him for a moment. Dud struggles to keep a grip on Yuria's chain as she continues her rampage, the leash going taut with every powerful strike. She's knocked away by a retaliatory blow, but someone in the crowd shouts pervert at Dud after seeing the collar and leash. She quickly recovers and clings to Dud's arm, blushing as he realizes Elia's obsessive fans are now hunting him down as well. Elia finds her path blocked by a massive, lumbering stone golem as someone calls out to her with a creepy, high-pitched voice. Sitting atop the golem is a green-haired guy with a long tongue and a manic, stalker-like gaze fixed on the hero. From the side, Dud watches the bizarre encounter unfold, his mask hiding the look of pure disgust on his face. The golem rider laughs, shamelessly offering to take Elia out for a meal once he's tamed her during the competition. Unimpressed by the offer, Elia grips her sword, her cold gaze and drawn blade making her stance on the matter very clear. The creep's smile falters as he realizes he's just signed his own death warrant by trying to hit on the heroic protagonist. Not far away, a long-haired student in white armor with a lion crest lies lazily in the grass, ignoring the battle entirely. Dud approaches the resting warrior, urgently asking for his help in dealing with the unwanted fan bothering Elia. Yuria watches with golden eyes as Dud points toward the golem, shouting for the warrior to wake up and protect his sister. A red system warning appears, sensing the mounting danger and activating an A-rank survival buff for the whole group. Dud shakes the orange-haired student, frustrated that he can sleep through a literal life-or-death battle happening right next to him. Elia doesn't wait for help, lunging forward as her blade sparks against the stone skin of the golem with a deafening crash. The orange-haired guy finally cracks one eye open, looking utterly bored by the news that Elia is fighting a stalker. Dud activates a powerful party-wide buff, the glowing energy flowing through the chain and leash connecting him to Yuria. Bolstered by the sudden surge in power, Elia prepares to finish the massive golem off with her next technique. She lets out a fierce battle cry, her entire body glowing with the divine light of her enhanced stats and killing intent. The golem master is nearly thrown from his perch as the sheer pressure of her enhanced aura hits him like a physical wave. Elia swings her sword down like a guillotine, the air itself screaming as it's torn apart by the weight of her blow. The stalker's eyes bulge out in terror as he realizes he's completely out of his league against the empowered Elia. Yuria wears a dark, knowing smile as she watches the other students scramble away from the massive blast. The Mind Realm skill activates, sharing the desperate survival buff across the entire party in real time. The golem is pulverized into gravel, and its master is sent crashing into the dirt with a bone-jarring impact. Masked Dud can't help but be impressed, watching the two girls work in perfect, if unintentional, harmony on the field. The golem rider is completely crushed by the residual pressure, the buff finally beginning to fade from the group. Elia stands over the rubble, breathing heavily as she tries to process the sudden power-up she just received. Her moment of peace is short-lived as another group of students charges in with heavy weapons, eager for her points. Yuria senses the new threat immediately, her long black hair whipping around her face as she prepares to strike again. Elia pivots and unleashes a wide arc of energy, a defensive shockwave that halts the charging crowd in its tracks. Yuria flips through the air with predatory grace, her chains rattling as she delivers a punishing acrobatic kick. The system offers a mock apology as the Mind Realm pressure sends the remaining attackers flying into the trees. Yuria stands among the defeated, casually mentioning that she was actually holding back her full power to avoid killing them. A giant flare of magical energy erupts in the distance, a signal of the intense battles happening deeper in the forest. Elia's eyes flash with a new sense of purpose as she prepares for her ultimate move, Guardian Burst. Elia Crixin X's Guardian Burst erupts in a blinding flash of energy, the sheer force of the explosion tossing her classmates aside like ragdolls. Moving with supernatural speed, Elia dashes through the clearing, her focused gaze locked onto her next objective as the dust begins to settle. Masked Dud watches the carnage from the sidelines, thankful that his F-rank stats keep him from being seen as a primary threat by the other competitors. A blue system window congratulates the team on their hard-won victory as Elia takes a moment to recover her breath and sheath her sword. Dud and Yuria share a quiet glance, the unmasked prophet expressing his relief that the battle ended without any permanent casualties among the students. Looking at the two of them, Elia can't help but smile, realizing that being on Dud's team is far more rewarding and fun than she ever expected. In another part of the forest, a glowing golden token hums with energy as it is added to a different team's growing collection. A cocky student with spiky red hair boasts about their progress, confident that their team's performance will earn them top marks for the midterm. His teammate, a girl in a dark habit, remains unimpressed, her eyes fixed on the scoreboard as she realizes they are still falling short of the top rank. The students huddle around a magical map of the plains, their confusion growing as they see the massive point lead held by the person in first place. Is this thing even working right? The red-haired boy asks, frustrated that they are still behind despite their relentless hunting pace. Another student is visibly shaken, finding it impossible to believe that anyone, especially someone like Fainal Rafek, could collect 15 tokens alone. Hidden behind her mask, Elnor's red eyes flare with an intense, unreadable emotion as she observes the tournament's progress from afar. Following the trail of points, Dud leads Elia and Yuria toward a cavernous opening nestled deep in the side of a mountain. Dud's mind races as they step into the darkness, recalling that this specific location was home to a dangerous random event in the original game story. Yuria suddenly freezes, her eyes darting toward the back of the cave as she detects a familiar magical signature emanating from the shadows. Her voice trembles as she utters the word sister, the shock of finding her long-lost sibling in such a place hitting her like a physical blow. Pinned to the cavern wall by glowing, vine-like restraints is a blonde woman named Lucian, her body serving as a conduit for a massive flow of energy. A new quest objective flashes into view. The group must protect both Lucian and Yuria Greyhounder from the mysterious power draining them. Yuria is mesmerized by the sheer volume of holy energy Lucian is emitting, realizing with horror that it's being used to fuel the entire surrounding region. Elia's grip on her sword hilt tightens, her protective instincts immediately kicking in as she prepares to cut through the magical bindings. Lucian's eyes are dim and listless, the heavy toll of being used as a living battery clearly visible in her pale, strained features. Wait, I will save you. Elia cries out, her heroic resolve shining through as she lunges toward the trapped woman without hesitation. The glint of steel and a flash of determination in Lucien's eyes signal the beginning of a rescue mission that will change their fates forever. Elia Crixenax stands her ground, her orange hair bright against the dark background. The priest narrows his eyes, claiming the saintess is acting of her own accord. He stands tall in his heavy armor, looking down on them while gripping a massive blade. Yuria Greyhounder watches from the side, trembling as the tension in the air rises. Elia glares at the saintess, asking why she'd ever volunteer for such a hideous task. A close-up shows a slit pupil glowing with a sudden surge of hidden power. The priest looms over a fallen Lucien while Elia keeps her sword ready to strike. Elia isn't backing down one bit, her face tight with focused anger. The guy just looks bored, like they aren't even worth the effort of a real fight. Dud Campbell stays calm, weighing the danger of messing with the Holy Empire. He knows the Empire is a massive power, and their Holy Emperor has a weird obsession with demons, and they've got Saintess Lucien caught right at the center of their political games. Dud's gaze sharpens as he thinks back to the recent chaos at the Academy. Elnor Elinori's La Tristan had just finished slaughtering a massive demonic beast. Between these constant attacks and the Purifier incident, everyone is already on high alert. Yuria's aura begins to flare up, her eyes wide as she prepares to defend herself. Dud steps forward, his expression shifting from calm to absolutely deadly. The priest's smug look vanishes when he realizes the kid isn't backing down. Yuria and Elia look on as Lucien struggles to keep her composure in the middle of it. Dud tells Elia to get the saintess to the nurse while he finishes this business. He challenges the guy to a duel, no more talking, just settling things between them. A blade slides out of its scabbard with a sharp, metallic ring. Dud moves in, a blur of motion that catches the priest completely off guard. The priest swings hard, but Dud's perfect counter is already in motion. A massive explosion of energy sends the priest flying across the room. The guy is left coughing in the dirt, his confidence and armor both shattered. Dud holds out a document, making sure the imperial family takes full responsibility for the mess. Atalanta Swanson looks over the duel request with a sharp, analytical eye. She's surprised he went through with it, asking if he was really that confident in his win. Lucien leans back and exhales a long breath, looking absolutely drained after the ordeal. Lucien gestures toward Yuria, who is still wrapped in heavy iron chains. She softly calls out to her sister, trying to bridge the gap between them. Yuria flinches instantly, her eyes wide with a deep-seated, animalistic fear. The chains around Yuria's body begin to rattle as she starts to tremble. She begs her sister not to come any closer, her voice shaking with panic. Lucien doesn't move, her gaze steady but filled with a quiet sadness. Yuria warns her that if she comes any closer, things are going to get ugly fast. A hidden mechanism clicks into place, ready for a lethal strike. Lucien grabs the chains herself, refusing to let the girl pull away. Hatton Wu Jewel watches from the shadows, noting how Dud gets stronger the more he's cornered. The observer can't help but smile at the sheer absurdity of the whole situation. A jagged, glowing weapon pulses with a dark and ominous red energy. The priest activates his nested blessings, preparing to put an end to this fight once and for all. He's suddenly flooded with divine energy, his blade glowing as he channels the power. With a ferocious look, he lunges forward, aiming to land one final, finishing blow. A system notification pops up. Dud now has access to Elnor's Mighty God Rage skill. The air shifts as both the priest and Dud lock eyes, their intent clashing in the heat of battle. They collide in the center of the arena, the force of the impact shaking the very ground beneath them. Dud grits his teeth, pushing back with every ounce of strength he has left in his body. The entire stadium is lit up by the massive release of energy from their brutal collision. Chancellor Atalanta Swansong watches from her seat, her monocle reflecting the chaos unfolding below. The onlookers are stunned, unable to believe a lowly F-rank student is holding his own against a Holy Empire knight. Energy arcs across Dud's face as he starts to tap into powers far beyond his body's actual limits. The priest tries to overwhelm him with raw force, but Dud stays right on him, matching every single strike. A dark system notification warns that demonic energy is gathering around the mark of the fallen. Atalanta leans forward in her seat, her expression shifting from curious to genuinely concerned. Both fighters are at their absolute breaking point, their eyes burning with a desperate need to win. Suddenly, the phantom of Elnor Elinori's La Tristan in her demon form manifests right over them. The sheer pressure of her presence is enough to nearly bring Dud to his knees. Dud realizes that even just enduring her manifested power is a fight for his own life. The demonic Elnor looms over the battlefield like a goddess of death, looking down at the struggle. Dud's mind is racing, trying to keep control while the chaotic demonic energy surges through him. Red lightning crackles around him as he's flooded with a power that feels like it's tearing him apart. The demonic Elnor whispers for him to give back exactly as much as he's been hit. The priest doesn't stop, screaming as he charges in for one final, desperate attack to end it. For a split second, something in the air shifts, and Dud finally finds the opening he was looking for. The priest's eyes go wide when he realizes he's just stepped right into a trap. Dud's hand moves like a blur, seizing the perfect moment of the priest's overextension. He connects with a brutal hit that leaves the Holy Empire knight reeling in shock. Dud's eyes glow with a terrifying red light as he fully channels the demonic rage. A massive burst of dark energy explodes outward, completely obliterating the priest's defense. The guy is sent spiraling backward, his armor cracked and his spirit utterly broken. The priest is launched high into the air, falling toward the arena floor like a lead weight. A golden light begins to settle over the arena as the combatants' energies finally dissipate. Dud stands alone, huffing and puffing as the intense adrenaline slowly starts to fade. He tells the officials to keep people like this away from the Saints from now on. A bearded man with a massive mustache watches with a grin, clearly impressed by the show. The priest lies defeated in the dust, glowing with the remnants of his failed blessings. A figure in a white cloak turns his back and starts to walk away from the arena. Sarah's, a girl with purple hair and cat ears, watches him go with a sharp, calculating gaze. She looks back toward the arena, her expression unreadable as she clutches her drink. Atalanta sighs in relief, while the bearded chief Hatton Wu Jewel laughs beside her. Hatton tosses a small object toward Dud, a rare lion's necklace that boosts workout efficiency. He tells Dud to come visit his furnace of battle sometime, promising a warm welcome. Dud Campbell bids farewell, his face showing a mix of exhaustion and relief after the intense duel. Hatton Wu Jewel walks away with his massive hammer slung over his shoulder, his presence as imposing as ever even in departure. Before Dud can leave, Atalanta Swansong catches up to him, her expression serious as she prepares to ask a difficult question. Dud shrugs off her comments about his performance, simply claiming that he was lucky to survive the encounter. Internally, he knows he's now caught the attention of powerful figures from both the Holy Empire and Hatton's tribe. Life at the academy continues under the bright blue sky, though the events of the day have changed everything for Dud. Dud rests for a moment, unaware that he's just completed a secret main quest and gained a seed of evil. He discovers a new item in his inventory, the Eye of Inspection, which allows him to see others' hidden stats. Wasting no time, he starts testing his new power by checking the marketplace for valuable items. He spots Elnor Elinori's La Tristan training in the distance, her silver hair flowing as she moves with incredible speed. The pressure she exerts is so intense that other students are literally blown away by the shockwaves of her movements. Dud adjusts his new goggles, focusing his gaze on Elnor to see exactly what kind of monster he's dealing with. The status screen confirms his fears. Elnor is the Grey Demon's vessel, with nearly all her stats reaching S rank. He notes with a grim expression that while her physical power is absolute, her corruption rate remains dangerously low. Dud's head spins as he realizes the sheer gap between them, just as a fellow student council member approaches Elnor. Elnor pauses her training, her face flushed and sweaty after a session that would have killed any ordinary student. The student council member hands her a record of student movements during the upcoming midterm exams. He cheers for her, celebrating her role as their prez and her tireless dedication to the academy's order. Elnor looks slightly flustered and taken aback by the sudden display of affection from her subordinate. As evening falls, the dark and winding stairs of the clock tower provide a quiet place for reflection. Dud leans over, his chest heaving as he struggles to catch his breath in the solitude of the high tower. He's suddenly frozen in place when a voice speaks out from the shadows, showing they know exactly who he is. The clock tower exterior looms over the grounds as a mysterious figure invites Dud to sit and calm down first. A young boy with golden eyes and regal attire stands before him, declaring that they are destined to be enemies. Valcasus, the boy king, reveals that a mysterious prophet warned him that Dud would be his greatest hurdle. Dark, swirling energy begins to pool around Valcasus as his gaze turns cold and accusatory. He demands to know if Dud intends to get in his way, his presence radiating an ancient and dangerous power. Dud stares back in shock, realizing that his own secret actions are already known to someone else. He wonders if this masked prophet is using the same knowledge of future events that he has been relying on. A massive, shadowy beast lets out a low, menacing growl. Valcasus, the boy king, calls out to Dud with a calm, confident look. Dud looks on as the kid asks him point-blank if he's planning to get in the way. The sun sets behind the academy's grand clock tower, casting a long shadow over the grounds. Valcasus mentions he's heard Dud already has some intel on them and wants to know exactly what he's found out. Dud breaks a sweat, telling the king he knows enough to see there's no real malice behind his actions. The king narrows his eyes, wondering if Dud expects him to play fair despite his plan to seize the academy. The academy courtyard is eerily quiet in the fading light. Dud stands on the balcony, questioning if fairly is even an option at this point. As night falls over the school, the king assumes Dud only came by to check if he'd fight dirty. Dud admits that's exactly the reason he's here. Valcasus tells him to take a good, long look then. A status window appears, showing over 2 million alchemic spells applied to a single body, an absolutely staggering number. A massive, masked figure looms behind Dud, highlighting just how dangerous the situation really is. Valcasus's eyes glow with an intense golden light. He claims that in 3 days, he'll save both Dud and his entire kingdom. Dud watches as the king turns to leave, his shadow stretching across the floor. He shouts for Valcasus to wait, but the king disappears into a gust of wind. A shadowy, red-eyed spirit is the only thing left behind. Dud is left alone on the balcony, realizing the king is truly gone. The clock tower stands silent under the bright moon. Back at the dorms, the Saintess Lucian checks in to see if everyone is dressed and ready. Yuria sits on the bed in a nightgown, looking completely embarrassed by her new attire. Lucian tells her she can take whatever she needs from the room and heads toward the window. Yuria holds up a black leash, explaining it was a gift from Dud to signify their relationship. Lucian just stares at her in silence while lighting up a cigarette. Yuria insists she has to wear it, because otherwise, Dud won't even look at her. She admits it was literally the only thing she could find to wear around her neck. Lucian takes a drag, lamenting that she's finally reunited with her sister only to find her like this. Dud gives a cheerful thumbs up, but the Saintess tells him that's exactly where the problem lies. She's becoming more suspicious of him by the second, as nothing about his story really adds up. Yuria lets out a sigh of relief when Lucian admits she's been taking good care of her. Regardless of who he is, Lucian demands to know every detail of his plan. We see two girls trapped inside green alchemic tubes, hinting at a darker past. Dud explains that Yuria's escape ended up ruining everything they had going. High above the academy, the mystery of Dud's true identity continues to loom over everyone. A brilliant blue orb of light begins to hum with power. Lucian walks across the stone courtyard with Dud following closely behind. Dud points out the irony of her scolding him for the leash when she's doing something far worse. He tells Yuria she doesn't need to wear the hood anymore and asks the Saintess to step outside for a moment. Elia turns back with a sharp look and gives him a flat no. They're all gathered under the massive glass dome, and Elia makes it clear that they still can't trust him. Lucian hands the lead to Elia, telling her to look after her sister. Yuria stays silent as the narrator explains that while demons roam the world freely, angels have much stricter rules. But for a true warrior, those rules don't exactly apply the same way. Elia is beaming. She can't believe she's being trusted this much already, seeing it as a huge step toward becoming a warrior. Dud's eyes widen as something catches him completely off guard. A heavy blade swings through the air with lethal intent. He stands his ground in front of a massive, glowing crystal, sword at the ready. Everyone's on edge as the situation starts to spiral out of control. Lucian takes a drag of her cigarette, figuring out that Dud's intel on the homunculus plan means he has some serious connections. Suddenly, the room is flooded with light as a high-ranking angel makes her grand entrance. Elia is stunned, barely able to even get the words out. The angel looks down with an expression that says she's definitely not here for a friendly chat. She floats above them, acknowledging Dud with a cold and formal tone. She leans in, asking if he's run into any of her soldiers before. Dud doesn't flinch. He knows exactly what's coming, a mental re-education to teach him some manners. They stand before the giant mana crystal, the air thick with tension. The mental attack hits like a truck, sending Dud straight to the floor. He grits his teeth, trying to fight through the sheer pressure on his mind. The angel gazes down, completely unmoved by his suffering. She lets out a tiny, confident smirk. Dud is struggling to even stay upright as she assumes he's ready for the trial to begin. Inside his mental space, the angel is baffled. The place is a complete void, totally empty. She starts to sweat, wondering if this guy is fundamentally neither good nor evil. The structures of his mind start shifting around, and the angel is already regretting not letting her soldiers take care of this. Back in reality, both Dud and Yuria have collapsed. Yuria is bound in chains, looking like she's just waiting for someone to go berserk. The angel asks if he closed off his mind on purpose, but Dud admits he doesn't even know how to build one. Massive, glowing pillars begin to crack and pulse with purple energy. Dud looks up, sensing that something far worse is on its way. He's genuinely terrified, asking the angel exactly what's supposed to be coming. She looks just as worried as he does. That's when a white-haired demon girl drops in, hanging upside down with a creepy smile. Both Dud and the angel are frozen in shock. Without warning, the demon girl lunges and grabs the angel from behind. She binds the angel in shadowy threads and gives a simple, chilling greeting. Her dark eyes lock onto them as she whispers that she's finally found what she was looking for. A system window pops up. The fragment of the white demon has officially taken an interest in Dud. Shadowy bindings wrap around him as the demon's voice echoes in his head. She gets uncomfortably close, even giving his neck a lick while he's pinned down. The angel isn't having it, pulling the demon back with a leash and telling her that's enough. The demon girl snarls, acting more like a wild animal than anything else. The angel barks at Dud to stay still, leaving him completely confused by the whole chaotic mess. The fragment of the white demon grits her teeth, her black eyes narrowing with a feral intensity. She lunges forward, a blur of white hair and pale skin in the dark void. She slams into the angel, the sheer force of her strike sending shockwaves through the mental space. The angel is sent reeling, coughing up blood as her composure finally breaks under the assault. The demon fragment doesn't let up, leaping through the air with predatory grace and a manic look on her face. A massive shockwave ripples through the darkness as their powers clash one last time. Shadowy threads bind the angel tightly as she shouts at the fragment to stay in her place. Dud stands firm, shouting back that they are destined to meet again no matter what she says. The angel's gaze turns icy, warning him that ignoring her will only lead to a grim fate. The demon fragment just smiles, clearly amused by the desperate struggle unfolding before her. She throws her head back and laughs, asking Dud if he really thinks his threats carry any weight. She gets uncomfortably close, eyes gleaming with madness as she promises to see him again, while Dud tells her to leave. She begins to vanish into the purple haze, leaving behind a chilling promise of her return. Dud watches the void clear, thinking to himself that things are finally playing out just like the original novel he knows. In reality, a heavy bar of star iron sits on a bedsheet, his hard-earned reward for surviving the mental duel. Later, Lucian sits on a bench, taking a drag of her cigarette while expressing shock that Dud actually obtained the material from an angel. Dud explains that star iron is a divine metal, incredibly durable and perfect for raising one's divinity. Elia listens intently, realizing that this metal might be the key to breaking the curse on Yuria's sister. They sit together in the academy courtyard, Dud noting that the real fight hasn't even begun yet. Elia is visibly stunned by the revelation, while Lucian stays quiet with her cigarette. Dud closes his eyes, focusing on the fact that academy attack is only one day away. The trio Elia, Yuria, and Lucian exchange worried glances, wondering if they are truly prepared for what's coming. The clock tower stands tall over the peaceful academy grounds, a silent reminder of the time they have left. Elsewhere, Elnor is buried in her books, her own cold plans hidden from the rest of the world. In a workshop, a purple-haired girl with a visor works diligently on complex machinery, preparing for the conflict. Valcasus, the boy king, looks on with a dark, brooding expression as his plans move forward. Meanwhile, the other students are full of excitement, talking about the final day of training and their hopes for first place. Dud walks through the bustling courtyard, feeling the disconnect between his world of secrets and the carefree lives of his peers. He knows that the peace they are enjoying is fragile and about to be shattered. In the distance, a girl with orange hair and a sharp mask watches him, calling herself the butterfly effect that will change everything. A mysterious figure in a dark hood watches the academy from the rooftops. Before Dud can even react, she's right behind him, claiming she's seen everything he's been doing. He demands to know who she is, but she just calls herself his #1 fan. Dud starts sweating, wondering if this girl is another one of those dangerous demon vessels he's supposed to watch out for. She reveals she's already swiped a key right out of his pocket without him noticing. She looks down on him, calling him out for being way too careless. This is bad. Dud is panicking because his danger sense didn't even flag her as a threat. She hops onto a ledge and starts talking trash about the other girls near him. She leans in close, telling him she's the only one who can actually understand him. She holds onto her prize, making it clear she's the only one in this world meant for him. Just like that, she leaps away, vanishing into thin air with a flash. Only a small white card is left floating where she once stood. Her eyes flash with a strange, intense light from beneath her hood. Dud is left standing there completely stunned by how fast that just happened. She gives him one last unsettling look as she vanishes, leaving him with a glowing item and a lot of questions. Meanwhile, Lucian is busy enjoying a snack, completely oblivious to the drama. She's hanging out with Elia, trying to convince her that she's actually pretty popular around school. Lucian mentions she's been hearing all sorts of things about Elias training from a secret fan club. She also points out how well Elia has been getting along with Dud lately. Elia stops mid-bite, clearly caught off guard by the mention of his name. She nearly chokes on her food, looking completely flustered as Lucian keeps teasing her. Over in the courtyard, Gideon and the others notice something is seriously wrong with the atmosphere. Inside the dorms, Yuria is passed out on her bed, totally drained of energy. In a quiet lab, Elnor is focused on her work, ignoring the chaos brewing outside. Suddenly, the massive magic barrier protecting the school starts to shatter like glass. Chancellor Atalanta Swanson leaps into action, trying to hold the magic together. She jumps into the sky as the barrier completely fails. She knows if this was planned, the enemy is going to have a lot of questions to answer. A massive purple magic circle forms over the clock tower, signaling the start of the invasion. Legions of monsters start pouring through the rift, ready to tear the academy apart. Students scramble for safety as the first wave of beasts hits the ground. A massive, three-eyed brute leads the charge, towering over the buildings. High above, someone manipulates magical threads like a puppeteer. Valcasus, the boy king, looks down with a cold smile, ready for the show. One of the monsters grabs a terrified student before they can even scream. Gideon draws his sword and charges in, trying to buy some time for the others. He screams for everyone to get a grip and find cover immediately. Atalanta unleashes a massive burst of light to push back the encroaching shadows. She's determined to find out exactly what the enemy's endgame is. Gideon and Lucian shout at the students to run faster and ignore the fighting. But more monsters are closing in, and they're looking for an easy meal. The Academy Knights stand their ground, but against creatures this size, they're in for a rough time. Monsters are tearing through the Academy defenses, and the Knights are barely holding on. Dud is sweating bullets, realizing his original plan to stay out of the spotlight is completely ruined. Elnor draws her sword, her eyes cold as she prepares to face the oncoming horde. She tells Dud to go on ahead, trusting him to handle his part of the strategy. Elnor stands her ground between the students and the monsters, determined to save the school at any cost. Dud reflects on everything he's had to deal with so far, the counts, the monsters, and the constant threat of assassination. He reminds Elnor that he's the last person who would jump into a fight without a foolproof plan. Despite the chaos, they stand together for a brief moment, two of the only people capable of stopping this nightmare. They take off running through the streets, but Dud quickly realizes Elnor is pushing herself way too hard. Suddenly, a gloved hand reaches out as a group of hooded figures blocks their path. These are Sarah's subordinates, and they aren't interested in bickering while the city burns. Dud is losing his patience, shouting that they don't have time for a debate. He faces down the mysterious assassins, telling them he has no clue what they're even talking about. Elnor cuts in, demanding they help her since she's the one actually in danger here. Sarah just stares back from under her hood, suggesting that surviving should be enough of a goal for them. Dud realizes that if he wants to survive this absolute mess, he's going to have to play along with these villains. He remembers the high-ranking demon vessels, like the one drinking wine and watching the world fall apart. He's fed up with everyone acting like people aren't dying out there while they play their games. Elnor looks at him, surprised by his sudden burst of intensity and his willingness to win by any means. Sarah leans in, telling Dud he'd better be telling the truth about his intentions. A system notification pops up. It looks like the master assassin is officially interested in him now. Sarah drops the attitude and agrees to help, calling Dud the Alliance Master. At the center of it all, the clock tower is surrounded by a massive vortex of dark magical energy. The roar of a massive monster echoes through the city as the seal finally breaks. A horrifying beast made of twisted, screaming faces emerges from the tower. Sarah's and her team charge straight at the creature, moving faster than the eye can follow. Elnor and Dud watch the exchange, both realizing they're way deeper into this than they ever expected. Sarah's is a blur of motion, carving through the smaller monsters with surgical precision. She unleashes a barrage of attacks that lights up the entire square with magical energy. Watching her fight, Dud is stunned by just how absurdly powerful a top-tier assassin really is. But the magic circle over the tower is still active, pumping out more energy for the boss. Elnor tells Dud to stay focused on their objective while they have an opening. They find themselves staring up at a massive, multi-faced giant that blocks their path to the tower. Without a second of hesitation, Elnor lunges forward to strike the titan. Dud watches her in disbelief, wondering if she really thinks she can just cut a monster that size in half. Her blade glows with an intense white light as she swings with everything she has. Just as she lands, Dud spots another threat and screams a warning for her to watch her left. A massive stone fist comes crashing down, nearly crushing them both. Dud yells at the beast, refusing to let it take Elnor out while he's standing right there. The giant monster lets out a deafening screech as the battle hits its peak. Elnor uses the momentum to spin through the air, looking for a weak point. She connects with a devastating blow that sends shockwaves through the entire courtyard. The giant monstrosity lets out a final, agonizing shriek as it's torn apart by the relentless assault. Elnor's red eyes burn with a demonic intensity as she pushes her internal power to its absolute limit. A massive shockwave ripples through the air from the sheer force of her blade connecting with the target. She doesn't let up for a second, diving straight back into the heart of the beast to finish what she started. With a single, fluid motion, her blade cleaves through the creature's thick hide, spilling dark ichor across the battlefield. Her gaze remains fixed on the target, cold and unwavering amidst the gruesome carnage. High above the chaos, a mysterious boy overlooks the destruction from the shadows of the academy roofs. Valcasus, the boy king, looks on with a sad, knowing smile as he remarks on his own tragic circumstances. On the ground below, Dud struggles to catch his breath, his body reaching its breaking point after the intense combat. He looks up to find the boy king staring down at him, questioning the terms of the bet they made. Magic circles flare into existence around Valcasus as he prepares to unleash a wave of forbidden magical energy. Shadows dance around the young king, his expression devoid of any remaining warmth as the ritual reaches its climax. Refusing to give in, Dud draws his blade once more, his resolve hardening despite the overwhelming odds. Valcasus speaks of a free death, a mercy he longs for but can never truly attain in this cycle. Deep within his memories, the image of a mysterious prophet lingers, the one who first set this tragedy in motion. She offered him a contract, promising to grant the release he so desperately desired if he fulfilled his role. A life where death is not permitted is a special kind of hell, and he was willing to pay any price to end it. Burdened by the weight of a dying kingdom and 1,000 years of pain, the boy king finally made his choice. It was a decision born of pure desperation, a gamble that would change the fate of everyone at the academy forever. Dud realizes the gravity of the situation, wondering if Valcasus knew the true, horrific cost of his promise. Suddenly, a burst of dark energy erupts, and a new wave of abominations is unleashed upon the battlefield. Bizarre, floating eyeball monsters with jagged teeth swarm the area, their presence alone warping the air around them. Yuria looks shocked as she's suddenly pulled into motion, her world descending further into chaos. In contrast, Lucian remains eerily calm, her confidence unshaken even as the situation spirals out of control. Elia rallies her companions, Yuria and Lucian, as they prepare for a desperate move to tip the scales. She activates a strange device, deciding it's finally time to take a reckless leap of faith. With a frantic yell, the three girls are launched through the air, caught between escape and a headlong charge. A massive monster is consumed by encroaching shadows, its form twisting into something even more grotesque. Dud watches closely, his veteran instincts kicking in as he identifies the changing phases of the boss fight. He tightens his grip on his sword, waiting for the perfect, calculated moment to strike back. Just evade, he screams to himself, the system's warnings flashing urgently in his mind. He maneuvers through the air with practiced ease, dodging the incoming lasers from the eyeball sentries. He growls in frustration, wondering why his allies aren't moving into their designated positions yet. A mocking voice echoes through his mind, expressing disappointment at his frantic struggle for survival. One of the floating monsters locks onto him, its core glowing as it prepares to fire a lethal beam of energy. He manages to find a safe zone, relieved that his veteran gaming experience is still holding up in this reality. A massive explosion rocks the giant monster's face, and Dud breathes a sigh of relief at Elnor's success. Elnor lands gracefully amidst the smoking rubble, her objective accomplished for the moment. But the battle is far from over. The remaining monsters' cores begin to pulse with a renewed, rhythmic energy. The clock tower itself seems to groan under the immense strain of the ongoing magical onslaught. Dud is thrown against a crumbling wall by a sudden shockwave, the air being driven from his lungs. As the smoke clears, a new and terrifying demonic figure with wings descends, its eyes fixed solely on him. Valcasus warns that once he reveals his true form, there is no stopping the destruction that follows. Dud stands frozen as the boy king's presence becomes overwhelmingly oppressive and cold. A wave of sheer magical pressure erupts from Valcasus, sending Dud tumbling backward across the cracked ground. Amidst the chaos of flying chains, the young king's eyes glow with a haunting, ancient light. Suddenly, Yuria and Lucian descend from the sky, narrowly avoiding a strike from a lurking monstrosity. Lucian remains perfectly composed as she lands, calmly assuring Dud that she has come to provide aid. Yuria's face lights up with pure joy as she spots her master, her voice full of relief at finding him safe. Elia hits the ground with a powerful impact, her expression determined as she joins the fray. Yuria rushes to Dud's side, explaining how her new star iron circlet finally allows her to be near him without her curse causing harm. She draws her weapon with newfound confidence, the chains that once bound her now following her command. Dud watches them, knowing that while the circlet helps, the weight of their destiny hasn't truly vanished. With a burst of radiant power, Yuria stands tall in shimmering golden armor, a transformed warrior ready to fight for her future. Elnor Illinois La Tristan stands her ground against the monstrous flash terror looming over the battlefield. Dud Campbell shouts orders to the group, promising they can win if they follow his lead exactly. Elia Crixenax stays in position, her eyes fixed on the monster as she waits for the signal to strike. Elnor looks back at the floating black eyes as she prepares for the next phase of the raid. Dud spots an incoming attack and warns everyone to watch out for a laser blast. Yuria Greyhounder stands ready with a cigarette in her mouth while Elia prepares to charge into the fray. One of the monster's dark eyes opens wide, charging up a powerful beam of energy. A massive blast hits the ground near Yuria as Lucian provides support from the distance. Elnor manages to block the attack, her expression serious as she stabilizes her stance. Dud keeps his focus on the chaotic battlefield, shouting for the team to keep moving. Elnor swings her sword with incredible force, creating a shockwave as she strikes at the beast. She continues her relentless assault, her golden armor shining amidst the dark energy. The monster's black appendages whip through the air, trying to catch the attackers off guard. Elia lunges forward with her massive sword, shouting as she closes the distance. She brings her blade down with all her might, aiming to cut straight through the monster's core. The monster retaliates with a swarm of dark eyes, tracking Elia's every move. A heavy impact sends Elia skidding back across the cracked ground. The flash terror's face contorts as it prepares for another devastating strike. Elnor recovers from the clash and prepares to follow up on Elia's opening. Yuria unleashes a burst of power, her cigarette smoke curling as she channels her magic. Dud tells Yuria to keep pressing the attack while Elnor stays focused on the target. Elia channels a massive amount of fire into her sword, her expression hardening. She shouts out the name of her attack, Burst Stream, as she unleashes a torrent of flames. The fire consumes the monster, burning through its dark defenses. Elia looks back with a confident grin while Dud acknowledges her successful strike. The flash terror mocks them, insisting that their efforts to kill it are futile. A massive magic circle appears above the Academy's clock tower, signaling the climax of the invasion. Ice shards shatter in the air as the barrier surrounding the tower begins to crumble. Chancellor Atalanta Swanson watches the events unfold through her monocle, checking her watch. The clock tower looms over the Academy as the sky turns a dark, ominous shade. Yuria and Elnor coordinate their efforts, ready to deliver a final blow. Dud shouts that the boss's pattern is changing and tells the group not to worry. Elia leaps into the air once more, preparing for another massive attack. A wave of dark energy erupts from the monster as it reaches its breaking point. Dud commands Lucian to apply a max attack buff for the final strike. Elnor uses her chains to bind the flash terror, locking it in place. A powerful hit lands squarely on the monster's face, cracking its mask. The chains tighten around the monster, preventing any chance of it escaping. Yuria takes a long drag of her cigarette and tells Valcasus it's time to give up. A blinding light erupts from the clock tower as the dark magic is finally dispelled. Valcasus, now in his true form as a young boy, screams in pain as his kingdom's curse lifts. He is pulled into a vortex of light as his forbidden arts are finally undone. Yuria Greyhounder takes a long drag of her cigarette, wondering how Valcasus is still holding on after everything. Valcasus screams in agony as the forbidden magic is finally being torn away from him. Yuria readies her glowing chains, preparing to finalize the sealing process. A surge of dark energy erupts around the boy king as he resists the inevitable end. Elia Crixenax holds her blade steady, thinking that this is their only chance to stop him. The exhausted king collapses to his knees, his strength finally failing him. Elia looks at him with resolve, telling the others it's her turn to act now. She urges the Saintess, Lucian, to take Yuria and move ahead while she stays behind. Lucian looks back with a calm smile, noting that no one ever said the king was going to die. Dud Campbell watches the scene with a faint, knowing smile. Alia's expression is full of emotion as she realizes the battle is finally coming to an end. Dud stands firm, stating clearly that dying was never part of the plan. Elia looks back at Dud, surprised by his calm demeanor amidst the chaos. Someone reaches for their sword hilt as the tension begins to dissipate. Elia, Lucian, and Elnor watch as the light of victory finally begins to shine down on the Academy. Dud thinks about the conditions to lift the forbidden art as he prepares his next move. He combines the soul linker and demonic essence, a risky maneuver to finalize the ritual. A golden pendant glows brightly as he activates the skill stigmata. Dud's vision blurs as a surge of electrical energy flows through his body. He groans in pain, the feedback from the demonic essence hitting him harder than expected. He grits his teeth, trying to stay conscious as the energy crackles around him. The strain is visible on his face as he fights to maintain control over the fusion. Dud pushes through the pain, reaching out to complete the final ritual. In the distance, the once grand buildings of the academy are engulfed in flames and smoke. The fires rage on, a stark reminder of the intensity of the battle that just took place. Valcasus looks at Dud with a solemn expression, the two of them now in a shared mental space. Dud warns him to be careful, as being swept away by old memories could trap them both here. He smiles at the boy king, telling him that he actually came here to save everyone. The golden barrier surrounding them begins to crack and shatter into pieces. Chancellor Atalanta Swansong uses her magic to stabilize the area, her expression calm as ever. The barrier fully gives way, dispersing the lingering magical energy into the air. The Academy's clock tower glows with a bright light, signaling the end of the crisis. Several quest completion windows pop up in front of Dud, rewarding him for his success. Dud looks up, weary but relieved, as the dust from the battle starts to settle. Elnor Illinois La Tristan stands over him, looking down with her signature piercing red eyes. The sun begins to set behind the clock tower, casting long shadows over the academy grounds. Dud remains on the ground, and Elnor remarks that he should have brought her along for the final scene. She stares at him with a look that might be interpreted as jealousy, or perhaps just pride. The two of them sit among the rubble, the immediate danger finally a thing of the past. The next day, the academy looks peaceful under a clear blue sky, as if the battle never happened. A student with a megaphone shouts the big news to everyone within earshot. He announces that because of the incident at the clock tower, their vacation has been pushed up early. The academy building stands tall and peaceful under the afternoon sun. Someone strikes a match, the flame flickering as they light a cigarette. A bouquet of flowers sits in a vase, accompanied by a note about Master Dud's meticulous nature. Yuria Greyhounder holds a fresh bunch of flowers, smiling as she reflects on their newfound togetherness. Yuria and Lucian stand together on the academy rooftop, watching the clouds drift by. Lucian smiles brightly, confident that no one will be able to look down on them ever again. A red-haired girl with glasses and pointed ears suddenly appears, asking them to keep the noise down. She gives them a stern look, clearly interrupted by their conversation. A framed family portrait sits on a desk, a silent reminder of the past. Elia Crixanax sits on the edge of her bed, her mind filled with doubt about her own qualifications. A girl in a black and white habit looks over some documents, her expression neutral. She encourages Elia to share her worries instead of bottling them up. The girl in the habit watches Elia closely, waiting for her to speak her mind. Dud Campbell meets with Chancellor Atalanta Swansong in a sunlit lounge. Atalanta sips her tea, explaining that the academy needs time to remodel after the recent incident. Dud's expression turns serious as he thinks about the mysterious prophet he encountered. He recalls the masked leader of the demon worshippers, wondering about their true identity. Dud is snapped back to reality by Atalanta's voice, his shock evident. Atalanta mentions the involvement of the student council president in the upcoming plans. Elia is seen resting on the ground, likely catching up on much-needed sleep. Elnor Illinois La Tristan sits in her room, her silver hair shimmering in the soft light. Dud screams in absolute terror at the revelation that Elia and Elnor are visiting his hometown together.